We turn our attention to Narnia during the Pevensies Golden Age. At Cair, after the White Witch's defeat, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy sit upon the four thrones of Narnia. Their reign begins in the spring that follows the long winter and continues through the southern journey remembered in The Horse and His Boy. Cair stood beneath the eastern sky in the late afternoon, on the day when Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy first approached it as kings and queens. Behind you, the battlefield lies quiet beneath a widening veil of pale smoke. The White Witch's forces have been defeated, and the 100-year winter is loosening its grip upon Narnia. Snow slips from the branches in slow, silver threads, falling into the dark soil beneath the trees. The air carries the clean salt wind from the eastern sea, mingled with the faint scent of trampled grass and cold iron. Ahead, beyond the low hills, Cair rises beside the harbour, its towers catching the last warm light. Distant gulls circle above the water. Their cries drift inland and fade among the stones. You walk with the four Pevensie children, though they no longer seem entirely like children. Their crowns have not yet been placed upon their heads, but the kingdom is already waiting for them. Peter walks first, eldest among the Pevensie children, carrying the sword with which he defeated Morgrim, the White Witch's chief lieutenant, before the final battle. His face is tired, and the dust of the battlefield remains upon his cloak. Susan follows with her bow across her shoulder, composed and watchful. Edmund walks more quietly, restored by Aslan after his betrayal, imprisonment, and long passage through shame. Lucy comes beside him, small and bright-eyed, carrying memories of the strange wardrobe that opened into snow. In the countryside of wartime England, the four children had been sent away from the dangers of the Second World War. Through that wardrobe, in the world described by The Lion, The Witch, and The Wardrobe, published in 1950, they entered Narnia. Now they are walking towards Cair, where an ancient prophecy waits to be fulfilled. The road descends gently towards the coast. Beneath your feet, the earth is soft with thawing snow, and each step presses a dark shape into the pale ground. Thin streams run between the roots, carrying small leaves and grains of sand towards the sea. The branches above you hold beads of water that tremble whenever a breeze passes. In the distance, the harbour opens like a quiet blue room between two headlands. Masts stand upright against the sky, their ropes making a faint, irregular music. Cair walls appear nearer now, built of pale stone that has gathered the afternoon warmth. The stones are marked by weather, salt, and many years of rain. Gulls move over the roofs. Their wings flash white, then disappear beyond the towers. The kingdom knows the meaning of the four figures approaching its eastern coast. The prophecy names 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve who are said to end the witch's reign. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy are those 4 children, though the words sound older than their voices and larger than their memories. For 100 years, the White Witch has ruled Narnia, holding the land beneath a winter without Christmas, without spring, and without the ordinary turning of the seasons. Her power has made the woods cautious and the rivers silent. Yet Aslan has returned, and with his return the spell begins to break. The witch's winter is ending. The children have survived the battle. The prophecy has become visible in their faces. Cair is no longer merely a distant castle. It is the place where their new lives will begin. Warmth lies upon the stone steps leading upwards from the harbour. The afternoon sun has dried their highest edges, while the hollows remain cool and damp. You feel the difference beneath your hand when you rest it against the wall. One side is warmed by light, while the other holds the chill of the long winter. Salt has gathered in fine white traces along the lower stones. Beyond the parapet, the eastern sea moves steadily against the shore. Small waves fold over one another, dark green at their centre and bright along the rim. The harbour smells of wet rope, old timber, fish, and clean water. Somewhere below, a door closes softly. A gull calls from a chimney. The sound travels across the courtyard and settles into silence. At the gates of Cair Paravel, the children are met by Narnians who have fought beneath Aslan's banner. There are beavers, badgers, dwarfs, centaurs, talking horses, and woodland creatures bearing the marks of battle. Their armor is scratched. Their cloaks are damp at the hems. Some carry broken spears, while others hold branches newly green with the first signs of spring. No one speaks loudly. The victory has left them weary, and the castle itself seems to be listening. Aslan is among them, immense and calm, his golden coat touched by the sinking light. He has restored Edmund after the witches' people took him prisoner, and Edmund now walks beneath the gaze of the lion who carried him back from death's shadow. Aslan has not come to claim a throne. He has come to witness what follows. Within the outer court, the snow has withdrawn from the paving stones. Water runs through the narrow channels between them, reflecting the walls in broken lines. The wind reaches you from the harbour, bringing the taste of salt to your lips. A length of blue cloth hangs from a tower, heavy with moisture, and lifts only when the air grows stronger. The banners of the old kings are faded, though their animals and crowns can still be seen. Along the walls, lamps are being lit one by one. Their flames look small against the broad stone arches. The scent of smoke mingles with damp wool and polished leather. The castle is preparing for a ceremony, yet it feels less like a celebration than the careful opening of a long-closed room. The great hall of Cair Paravel has 4 thrones beneath its eastern windows. They stand on a raised platform, shaped from dark wood and edged with carved leaves. Above them hang old banners, their colours softened by age. Peter's throne is highest, set slightly forward from the others, though all 4 places have been prepared. The empty spaces around the thrones seem almost as important as the seats themselves. They suggest councils yet to be held, judgments that will require patience, and mornings when the rulers will rise before the sun has warmed the sea. Kingship is not only the shining instant of victory, it is the daily responsibility of listening, deciding, remembering, and remaining present. The children have come from battle. They are about to inherit the quiet work that follows. Light enters through the tall windows in long golden bars. Dust moves slowly within it, turning and disappearing above the flagstones. The floor has been rubbed until the wood reflects the lamps, the old banners, and the moving shapes of the gathered Narnians. Along the walls, polished shields lean beneath carved pillars. Their surfaces hold dim reflections of the fire. The hall smells of beeswax, oak, wool, and the faint mineral scent of wet stone. Outside, distant gulls pass above the harbour. Their calls are softer here, filtered through glass and thick curtains. You hear the occasional creak of timber as the sea wind presses against the castle. Beneath everything lies the low, steady sound of waves moving against Cair Paravel's eastern shore. Peter enters the hall with the sword at his side. He's still the boy who once played among railway platforms and luggage, still the brother who tried to protect Susan, Edmund, and Lucy in an English house far from the sea. Yet Narnia has placed other memories inside him. He remembers the charge across the battlefield. He remembers the clash with Morgrim. He remembers the moment when the witches' army broke and the snow began to melt. As he approaches the high throne, the people of Narnia see not an evacuee from wartime England, but Peter the Magnificent. The title carries the grandeur of a monarch, though Peter's hands remain those of a young man who has learned responsibility before reaching adulthood. He takes his place above the others. The throne is warm where the afternoon light has touched it. Its arms are smooth beneath your fingers, polished by generations of use. Small carved leaves run along the back, their edges softened by time. Behind Peter, an old banner stirs in the draught, showing a lion worked in thread that has faded from red to rust. Firelight moves across the floor. A faint scent of cedar rises from the wooden platform. Somewhere near the rear of the hall, a horse shifts its weight, and a hoof touches stone. The gathered company remains quiet. Beyond the windows, the harbour darkens by degrees. One pale sail moves between the towers. Evening is coming gently, without the sharp cold that once marked every hour of Narnia. Susan takes the throne at Peter's right. She has been called Susan the Gentle, though gentleness in Narnia does not mean weakness or uncertainty. Her calm has protected the others when fear might have scattered them. Her bow, her judgment, and the horn given to her have made her known also as Susan of the Horn. When she sits, she does not look towards the high throne for instruction. She looks across the hall, towards the people whose lives have been altered by the witch's defeat. Susan remembers England, the countryside, the house where the wardrobe stood, and the ordinary world that still exists beyond Narnia's borders. Her public role will be one of mercy joined to clear sight. She will hear grievances, settle disputes, and carry gentleness into decisions that cannot always be gentle. The place beside Susan is made of pale wood, its surface reflecting the amber firelight. A narrow cushion lies upon it, woven with blue and silver thread. The threads have caught a little dust from the road, and Lucy brushes it away before she sits nearby. Air moves through the hall from the open doors, carrying the fragrance of wet grass and the sea. The stone beneath the platform retains the chill of winter, while the upper walls have begun to hold warmth. A banner taps once against its wooden pole, then becomes still. Outside, water drips from the roof tiles into a basin in the courtyard. The drops arrive at an even pace. They sound like a quiet clock. Edmund sits next, and the people of Narnia remember his absence before they see his place among the rulers. He has betrayed his brother and sisters under the witch's influence, but his betrayal has not been the end of his story. The witch imprisoned him, and Aslan restored him, returning him to the living world with a mercy Edmund did not believe he deserved. He later became known as Edmund the Just. The name does not erase what happened. It gives him a duty shaped by what happened. Edmund knows how easily pride can distort judgment, how quickly a promise can become a chain, and how deeply a frightened heart may long for forgiveness. His throne will require honesty. He will examine laws, hear difficult testimony, and remember that justice must leave room for restoration. The wood beneath Edmund's hand is darker than the other thrones. Its grain forms long, quiet lines, like ripples upon deep water. A small mark remains near one arm, perhaps made by a sword long ago. Firelight reaches it, and then moves away. From the courtyard comes the smell of soil newly released from snow. It is rich, damp, and almost sweet. The eastern wind passes through a crack in the shutters, touching your cheek with cool salt. On the far side of the hall, a bowl of water trembles slightly. No voice rises above a murmur. Every sound seems softened by the heavy banners. The castle is settling around its new rulers. Lucy takes the fourth throne, and her smallness makes the great hall seem larger around her. She has entered Narnia first, seen the lamppost in the snow, spoken with Mr. Tumnus, and carried hope when the others were not yet ready to believe. Her title is Lucy the Valiant. It belongs not only to courage in battle, but also to the courage of trust, compassion, and attention. Lucy remembers the English countryside, the ordinary rooms, and the wardrobe whose fur coats opened into another world. She also remembers Narnia's winter, the lonely lamppost, Edmund's imprisonment, and the return of Aslan. When she settles beneath the old banners, she becomes part of a royal household that still contains 4 children who once shared a bedroom and quarreled over small things. A faint breeze enters through the eastern windows and lifts the edge of Lucy's cloak. The fabric brushes against the throne with a dry, whispering sound. Her crown catches a narrow thread of light. On the stone sill, a bead of melted snow gathers, swells, and falls into the dust. The hall is warm near the hearth and cooler beside the windows. You can feel the 2 temperatures meeting across your hands. Outside, the gulls have moved farther towards the darkening water. Their calls come less often now. At the harbour, Ropes knock gently against masts. The rhythm is slow and irregular. Above the roofs, the sky changes from gold to lavender, and the first evening star appears over the sea. The coronation transforms the 4 evacuee children into the 4 figures of the ancient prophecy, but transformation does not destroy their earlier selves. Peter remains Peter. Susan remains Susan. Edmund remains Edmund. Lucy remains Lucy. They are English children who have become monarchs in a land of talking beasts, enchanted forests, giants, dwarfs, and centaurs. Their crowns rest upon their heads, yet their memories still include railway smoke, schoolrooms, cold bedrooms, and the distant war that made them leave home. Narnia does not ask them to forget England. Instead, the kingdom receives the strangeness of their history and joins it to its own. The prophecy has reached its fulfillment, but fulfillment is the beginning of a long period of learning. From the high windows, the coast extends north and south beneath the evening. The sea has darkened to a deep blue-grey, with narrow bands of copper where the last light remains. Along the shore, wet stones gleam like small pieces of slate. The harbour boats move gently at their moorings, and the old ropes creak against the posts. Snow still clings to shaded corners of the walls, although the open ground has turned brown and soft. Water gathers beneath the melting banks and runs towards the sea. The scent of cold salt is stronger now. A gull settles on the parapet and folds its wings. For a moment, it watches the castle. Then the bird turns its head towards the fading light. Aslan remains present through the coronation, but he does not remain as a permanent court ruler. His place is different from that of Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. He has returned when Narnia needed him, broken the power of the witch, restored Edmund, and guided the children towards the thrones prepared for them. Yet the kingdom must now be governed through ordinary days, ordinary judgments, and the patient choices of its human rulers. Aslan's presence gives the ceremony its deepest meaning, while his departure leaves the children with their own responsibilities. They cannot ask him to decide every question. They must learn the weight of decisions that have no clear battlefield and no single enemy. Peace will test them more quietly than war. The great hall grows dim as servants lower the lamps. The flames tremble within their metal cups, drawing small golden shapes across the polished wood. Old banners hang in layers of shadow, and the carved leaves of the thrones become less distinct. The fire gives a gentle heat to the nearest stones, while the far corners keep their coolness. Beyond the doors, the courtyard smells of wet earth and rain-soaked timber. A thin mist begins to form above the harbour. It moves between the buildings without hurry. From the eastern sea comes the measured breathing of the tide. Each wave reaches the shore, loosens its white edge, and returns. The sound fills the spaces between words. Peter's reign begins with the duties of a high king. He must speak for the kingdom, receive envoys, protect the borders, and carry the memories of battle into the laws of peace. Susan, Edmund, and Lucy rule beneath him, each with authority of their own. Their relationship is not merely that of an elder brother and younger sisters, or of a brother seeking to repair what was broken. It is a royal household shaped by affection, disagreement, counsel, and shared history. Peter's high throne does not remove the others. It gives their 4 places an order. The empty space beyond the platform remains open for visitors, petitioners, and those whose voices have not yet reached the castle. The thrones are occupied, but the work of ruling has only begun. Night settles over Cair Paravel. The eastern sea becomes almost black beneath the clouded sky, though a narrow path of reflected moonlight lies upon it. The harbour lamps shine in small clusters between the masts. Wet stone glimmers along the steps. You feel the day's remaining warmth fading from the walls as the salt wind moves through the arches. Somewhere below, a wooden shutter closes. A rope knocks softly against a post. The castle smells of extinguished lamps, old timber, and damp wool drying near the fire. The snow continues to melt in the darkness. It sinks into the soil without a sound. Only the gulls remain awake above the water, turning once through the night air before settling upon the roofs. The years ahead will become known as Narnia's Golden Age, beginning after the White Witch's defeat and the coronation at Cair. The four monarchs will grow within that age, and their separate temperaments will become part of the kingdom's memory. Peter will be remembered for courage and command. Susan will be remembered as Susan the Gentle and Susan of the Horn. Edmund will be remembered as Edmund the Just, whose judgment was deepened by forgiveness. Lucy will be remembered as Lucy the Valiant, whose courage had always been joined to kindness. Their reign will seem almost timeless when viewed from the later stories, though it is made from individual mournings, councils, journeys, disagreements, and returns. Beyond the castle, winter retreats through the forest. Snow thins beneath the firs. Meltwater darkens the roots. Small green shoots appear beside stones warmed by the sun. The wind from the eastern sea is still cold, but it no longer carries winter's complete silence. Birds begin to move among the branches. Their calls are faint and tentative. In the harbour, the tide rises against the walls, lifting strands of seaweed and turning them slowly in the water. The great hall is quiet now. The polished wood has lost its glow. The old banners hang without movement. 4 crowns rest above 4 tired faces. Outside, Cair breathes with the sea. The later adventure told in The Horse and His Boy takes place during this golden age, when Peter is High King and Susan, Edmund, and Lucy rule beneath him. Peter is absent from that southern adventure because he has gone to campaign against giants on Narnia's northern frontier. His absence does not mean that his kingship has weakened. It shows that Narnia requires watchfulness even during its brightest years. The northern campaign belongs to the same long reign that began here, beside the eastern sea and beneath the old banners of Cair. While Peter rides towards the giants, the other 3 continue the work of government. Their stories grow outward from the 4 thrones, each journey carrying a different part of the kingdom's character. Far above the harbour, clouds move slowly across the stars. Their edges hold a faint silver light, and their shadows pass over the water. The castle walls are cool beneath your palm. Salt has dried upon the stones in thin, uneven marks. From the courtyard rises the scent of dark soil where the last snow has become water. The air is still enough for every small sound to remain clear. A hinge turns. A lamp flickers. Waves touch the shore. The old banners make a slight rustle as the night wind enters. Nothing hurries. The sea continues its patient motion beside Cair, and the kingdom rests beneath the first peaceful darkness it has known for 100 years. Within the hall, the 4 thrones wait beneath the faded banners. Peter's high throne stands above the others. Susan's place is quiet and steady. Edmund's holds the memory of judgment and mercy. Lucy seems touched by the last warmth of the fire. No army gathers beyond the doors. No white enchantment covers the fields. The witch's reign has ended. Aslan has gone from the court, leaving the kingdom in the hands of those whom the prophecy named. 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve. 4 children from England, 4 rulers of Narnia. The lamps burn lower, the sea grows softer. At Cair, the stone steps cool beneath the night air. The banners rest. The harbour darkens. Snow melts into the earth, and the earth receives it quietly. Over the eastern coast, the first long peace begins. Peter holds the crown of High King at Cair, while Susan, Edmund, and Lucy reign beneath him as kings and queens of Narnia. Their authority does not arise from marriage or inheritance through an ancient dynasty, but from the strange fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve have come from England, and the Narnians recognize them as the promised rulers who will restore the kingdom after the witch's winter. Peter is High King because his magnificence gives courage and shape to the common purpose of the 4, and because his sword has already been lifted in Narnia's defense. Susan is Queen Susan the Gentle, whose calm attention and careful judgment prevent haste from entering the councils of the kingdom. Edmund bears the title King Edmund the Just, a name that remembers both the fairness he now practices and the grievous road by which he learned it. Lucy is Queen Lucy the Valiant, whose courage is softened by compassion and whose hands carry healing wherever suffering has left its mark. Within the great halls of Cair Paravel, the new reign settles slowly into the ordinary business of peace. Quiet quills move across parchment beneath the tall windows, recording the names of villages, the measures of grain, and the roads requiring repair. Sunlight falls in long, pale bands across the stone floor, touching the edges of maps and making the dust appear like fine gold suspended in the air. At the council table, cups pass from hand to hand with a soft clink, while the sea beyond the open arches breathes against the shore. Leather belts and bridles hang in the courtyard, where horses stand patiently beneath the shadow of the walls. The cold memory of snow has withdrawn from the gardens, leaving dark soil, wet branches, and small green shoots lifting themselves towards the morning. Under Cair Paravel's towers, the evening air is cool, and the stone keeps the day's warmth only in quiet, fading patches. Peace, they discover, is not a single moment after battle, but 1,000 careful decisions made when no sword is drawn. A peaceful court demands patience, listening, and judgment, because every dispute once settled by force must now be given time to speak. Farmers come to ask about boundaries, merchants seek protection for their caravans, and messengers arrive from woodland communities that have been silent for many years. Peter listens first, though his nature inclines towards action, while Susan notices details that might escape a warrior accustomed to seeing the whole field at once. Edmund weighs each petitioner's words, considering not merely who has spoken most persuasively, but whose claim can endure the light of fairness. Lucy remembers the faces behind every matter, because a broken bridge is also a child walking a longer road, and a shortage of grain becomes hunger in a household. Their authority is balanced by their differences, and the strength of one ruler is quietly corrected by the wisdom of another. Peter's magnificence gives the court confidence, yet Susan's gentleness keeps confidence from becoming pride. Beneath the high roof, the sound of writing continues, steady as a small stream passing over pebbles. The parchment has a dry, papery scent, and the ink darkens gradually as it meets the fibers. A window stands open towards the eastern sea, carrying the smell of salt, kelp, and distant rain into the chamber. Several candles remain unlit because the afternoon is bright, although a silver cup catches the sunlight and returns it in a trembling circle across the table. From the courtyard comes the muted stamping of horses, followed by the creak of leather as a groom checks a bridle. Even the banners appear changed, no longer bearing the cold emblem of the witch, but moving gently beneath a sky that belongs once more to the living world. Beyond the walls, thawing streams loosen the earth and carry tiny fragments of ice towards the harbor. The kingdom is recovering, and recovery makes its own quiet music, composed of footsteps, tools, low voices, and water passing through reeds. Peter remains most at ease where the ground is open and the danger visible. His swordsmanship has become a language understood by soldiers, centaurs, fauns, and talking beasts alike, while his battlefield leadership allows frightened hearts to move together without confusion. Yet the High King learns that a council chamber cannot be governed like a battlefield. An enemy does not usually arrive carrying 3 different memories of the same boundary dispute, and a village elder cannot be commanded into agreement merely because the royal voice is clear. Peter therefore begins to practice a kind of courage less bright than combat, sitting through long petitions and allowing silence to remain until the right question can be found. Susan helps him distinguish authority from insistence, gently reminding him that a ruler may be obeyed and still fail to understand. Edmund explains the consequences of each decision, while Lucy asks what it will mean when the decision reaches the smallest and most distant home. In this way, Peter the High King becomes more than the greatest fighter among them. He becomes the center around which the different virtues of the four rulers can gather without losing their separate forms. Evening enters the chamber gradually, turning the tall windows from gold to grey. The quills are set aside, one after another, and the parchment is weighted at the corners so that the sea wind cannot lift it. A servant pours the last of the day's tea, and the soft clink of cups settles beneath the quiet murmur of the council. The leather of a sword belt gives a faint creak when Peter rises from his chair. Susan folds a map along its old creases, while Edmund smooths a corner that has curled in the damp air. Lucy carries a small wooden case beneath her arm, polished by use and kept close whenever the court leaves the castle. Outside, the towers darken against the western sky, and the first cool currents of evening move between the stones. A gull calls once above the harbour, then the sound is carried away over the water. Within Edmund's title, the history of his betrayal remains present, though it no longer governs him. Before the rain began, he listened to the witch's promises and accepted the enchanted sweetness of the Turkish delight she offered him. He betrayed Peter, Susan, and Lucy, and his betrayal endangered the whole company during their first struggle against winter. Repentance came through suffering, truth, and the sacrifice Aslan made in his place, after Edmund understood the damage caused by his desire. Restoration followed, not as an erasure of the past, but as a return to fellowship with greater humility than he had possessed before. Now King Edmund the just carries that memory into every judgment. He knows how easily a person can mistake appetite for wisdom, charm for goodness, and private advantage for a rightful claim. When two merchants dispute ownership of a cargo, Edmund asks each one to describe the other's position before presenting his own evidence. When a border settlement complains against a lordly household, Edmund examines the old agreements as carefully as he studies the witnesses. His justice is not cold, because he understands that a fair decision may still bring sorrow, and that sorrow does not by itself prove the decision wrong. The Narnians remember Edmund's earlier mistake, but they also remember his return. That memory makes his restored honor more meaningful, since the name Edmund the Just has been earned through correction rather than inherited without trial. Night gathers behind the windows, and the chamber takes on the color of dark blue wool. A fire settles in the grate, sending mild warmth towards the council table and a faint fragrance of ash into the room. The stones near the hearth retain the day's heat, while the corners remain cool beneath the vaulted ceiling. Pages whisper when they are gathered into bundles, and the ink glimmers briefly before the candlelight grows too weak to catch it. A cup is left untouched beside a stack of reports, its surface reflecting a narrow flame. The courtyard below grows still, though a horse shifts its weight, and the buckle of a bridle taps softly against the wooden rail. From the eastern side of the castle comes the breathing of the sea, long and regular against the dark shore. Cool evening air moves beneath Cair, Paravel's towers, carrying the mineral scent of the walls and the distant sweetness of grass beginning to grow again. In the first reign of the four children, abundance and order gradually become the phrases by which later generations describe their rule. The fields are planted without the constant fear of raiding, and the roads become safer for travelers who once waited for armed escorts. Markets reopen beneath striped awnings, while beavers, badgers, dryads, and human settlers bring their goods into common exchange. The witches' old hoards are distributed where they can strengthen the kingdom, and the empty halls begin to receive laughter, music, and ordinary life. Peter oversees the protection of the roads and the training of soldiers, ensuring that peace is guarded without becoming permanent suspicion. Susan listens to petitions from distant communities and establishes customs by which disputes can be heard before resentment becomes violence. Edmund works with scribes and messengers to clarify laws, settle agreements, and maintain correspondence with rulers beyond Narnia. Lucy visits the sick, the injured, and households still marked by the long winter, carrying comfort as naturally as other queens carry jewels. Their golden age is therefore not only a political era remembered for abundance and order. It is also the period in which 4 children from England grow older in Narnia, becoming adults under the slower and deeper measure of that world. In England, the passage of time remains brief and ordinary, but in Narnia, the years open before them like a wide road through changing forests. Their voices deepen, their shoulders broaden, and their understanding grows more patient as one season follows another. The crowns remain upon their heads, yet the faces beneath them gradually lose the softness of childhood. Rain begins during the night, brushing the windows with fine fingers and darkening the courtyard stones. By morning, the roofs shine beneath a pale sky, and water gathers along the carved mouths of the castle gutters. The great windows admit a diluted light that lies quietly upon maps and parchment. Beneath the covered walkways, servants move with baskets of grain, bundles of cloth, and sealed letters from the western settlements. Leather straps have been treated with oil, and their surfaces feel smooth beneath a groom's careful hand. The horses breathe steam into the cool air, their bridles making small metallic sounds whenever they turn their heads. A cup placed near the window grows cold before anyone remembers to drink from it. In the gardens, wet leaves touch one another whenever the wind passes, and a narrow channel carries rainwater towards the lower rocks. The rain does not hurry the castle, and the castle does not hurry the rain. The 4 rulers grow into their responsibilities through such mornings, learning that a kingdom is made of repeated attention rather than grand occasions alone. Susan's gentleness is not weakness, and her bow is not merely a symbol of an earlier battle. She practices archery with the concentration of someone who understands that distance can conceal both danger and truth. Her arrows travel cleanly towards their marks, but her judgment is shown most clearly when she chooses not to release one. In council, Susan considers consequences before appearances, and she can wait while others speak themselves beyond the limits of their own arguments. Her horn remains close to her, kept in a place of honor, but never treated as a decoration. Father Christmas gave Susan the magical horn during the witches' winter, when the world lay beneath snow and hope seemed hidden beneath ice. The horn can summon help when it is blown, and its call may travel farther than ordinary sound, reaching those separated by forest, hill, or storm. Susan has learned that such power requires restraint, because help summoned too soon may disturb a peaceful settlement, while help summoned too late may arrive after suffering has deepened. She carries the horn on journeys and at ceremonies, its surface catching the light whenever she moves. By the Southern Crisis, Susan has become both archer and diplomat, capable of standing beneath a foreign roof while measuring every word. The rain has passed by afternoon, leaving the flagstones bright as slate beneath a clearing sky. Water drops remain along the carved edges of the windows, each holding a tiny, trembling reflection of the castle walls. In the courtyard, bridles hang from wooden pegs, and belts of dark leather are laid across saddles to dry. A stable boy brushes a horse whose coat gives off the warm, grassy smell of its body. From an upper chamber, the faint sound of quills resumes, marking the return of letters, inventories, and royal instructions. The sun enters through tall windows at a lower angle, touching dust in the air and making the chamber seem filled with slow-moving stars. At the council table, cups are set in a careful row, and the porcelain clicks softly when one is moved. The harbour below has begun to stir, though the sea itself remains subdued after the night's weather. Susan prepares for travel among these familiar sounds, placing the horn where it can be reached without thought. Lucy's small wooden case rests beside it, its hinges polished, and its contents protected from damp. Lucy's courage has never been separate from compassion. When danger comes, she moves towards those who are afraid, not because fear is absent, but because another person's suffering has become more important than her own safety. Father Christmas gave Lucy a healing cordial during the witch's winter, and the little bottle has remained among the most precious objects in the royal household. Its contents possess a power greater than ordinary medicine, though Lucy uses them with care and never wastes a drop. After the battle against the witch's forces, she used the cordial to treat the wounded, moving among fallen soldiers while the field still held smoke, blood, and broken weapons. Her hands were small then, yet they carried life back into bodies that seemed almost lost. Now, in the peaceful years, she visits infirmaries and villages where old injuries remain troublesome. She knows that healing may require a bandage, a potion, a quiet room, or simply the attention of someone willing to remain beside the bed. Lucy's title, Queen Lucy the Valiant, is therefore joined to a gentleness of her own. She can cross a battlefield with the same steadiness with which she enters a sick room, carrying courage into both places. Morning light lingers on the walls after the clouds have withdrawn. The cordial case gives a faint wooden sound when Lucy closes it, and the bottle within rests against its padded lining. A linen cloth nearby carries the clean scent of soap and dried herbs. From the courtyard rises the smell of wet stone, while horse tack creaks beneath the hands of attendants preparing the royal animals. A quill scratches at a final line of writing, then pauses as the scribe checks the seal. The council cups have been cleared, though one small ring of moisture remains upon the polished surface. At the far end of the hall, a door opens towards the sea, and cool air passes through the castle with the freshness of distant rain. Lucy stands beside the window with the cordial near her hand, watching a line of gulls turn above the harbour. Susan's horn lies wrapped in blue cloth, its curved shape visible beneath the folds. The objects are quiet, but both carry the memory of winter and the promise of aid. As the children mature, their golden age becomes increasingly marked by journeys beyond the eastern coast. Narnia is not an isolated kingdom, and peace within Cair Paravel does not prevent trouble from gathering among distant neighbours. Messages arrive from the southern kingdoms, where suspicion, ambition, and uncertainty have begun to disturb the balance between courts. The rulers of those lands wish to see the children of prophecy. Some regard their wealth and beauty with admiration, while others consider how such qualities might serve their own advantage. Susan and Lucy are asked to travel south as royal guests and diplomats, carrying the dignity of Narnia into a region where every gesture may be remembered. Edmund travels with them during the southern crisis, bringing his knowledge of law, diplomacy, and fair decision-making. His presence gives weight to their conversations, since he can recognize the difference between a misunderstanding, a deliberate insult, and a promise designed to conceal a trap. Susan brings the horn, though it remains silent unless help must be summoned. Lucy carries the healing cordial, prepared for wounds that may arise despite every effort towards peace. Peter, however, is not at Cair Paravel when these events begin. He remains away fighting giants in the north, where the frontier has become dangerous, and the safety of the northern roads depends upon his leadership. The court is therefore temporarily divided between frontier warfare and southern diplomacy. The castle grows quieter when Peter's household staff are occupied elsewhere. A saddle is lifted from its stand, and the leather gives a low groan beneath the weight. Bridles are checked by touch, the metal fittings cold from the morning air. In the long gallery, sunlight moves across portraits and carved pillars, pausing briefly on the polished hilt of a sword. Quills continue their slow work in the offices, carrying news northwards and southwards through careful lines of ink. The cups at the council table sound more lightly now, because fewer voices gather around them. Through the open arches comes the smell of salt water and damp rope from the harbour. A gull settles on the roof ridge, shakes its wings, and remains there while the wind moves around the towers. The evening air beneath Cair Paravel is cool enough to touch the skin with gentle clarity. Beyond the walls, the roads stretch towards distant kingdoms, each carrying messengers, merchants, soldiers, and rumours. Peter rides north beneath another sky, while Susan, Edmund, and Lucy prepare to ride south. The division of their path does not break the unity of the four rulers. Peter's sword has its work among the giants, and Susan's horn, Edmund's law, and Lucy's compassion have their work among the southern courts. Their strengths do not compete, because each becomes more useful when joined to the others. At Cair Paravel, the remaining advisors arrange sealed documents, provisions, cloaks, and maps for the journey. Susan studies the southern roads, noting the rivers, passes, and towns where travellers may find shelter. Edmund reviews the agreements sent by the southern rulers, searching for words that might bear more than one meaning. Lucy checks the supplies for the sick, adding clean cloths and herbs beside the precious cordial. Their departure is a matter of diplomacy, yet the danger surrounding it is real. A court may offer music and hospitality while concealing resentment behind a courteous smile. Edmund remembers that appearances once deceived him, and his past mistake makes him watchful without making him bitter. Susan's careful judgment keeps watchfulness from becoming suspicion. Lucy's compassion reminds them that even those who act wrongly may be afraid, confused, or burdened by forces beyond their understanding. In the north, Peter's battle against the giants continues beyond the reach of their immediate sight. The road south begins beneath a clear morning, with shadows lying long beneath the towers. Hooves strike the courtyard stones in an even rhythm, and the bridles answer with a restrained music of leather and metal. Susan's cloak moves in the sea breeze, while the horn rests securely against her side. Lucy's case is fastened beneath a fold of cloth, protected from dust and sudden rain. Edmund carries the documents of the southern courts in a sealed leather wallet, together with the royal signet. The castle servants speak quietly as they load provisions, their voices mingling with wheels turning over the packed earth. Sunlight falls through the tall entranceway, making the open gate appear brighter than the shadowed passage behind it. Cair Paravel's walls hold the memory of the first winter, yet the air outside carries the smell of green fields and moving water. The sea lies beyond the harbour, pale beneath the morning, and the wind lifts the banners towards the east. Behind the riders, the towers rise white and still, keeping watch over the kingdom. Ahead, the southern roads wait beneath hills softened by distance. The children leave the court knowing that their realm is larger than any single hall, and that rule requires presence where familiar walls cannot protect them. During the journey, Susan and Lucy travel as royal guests, bearing the dignity of Narnia through lands that do not yet fully trust the peace. Edmund travels beside them, prepared to translate courtesy into agreement and disagreement into words that can be endured. They have not forgotten Peter, who remains away fighting giants, and they make their decisions with his eventual return in mind. The southern crisis will test their diplomacy, but it will also reveal the maturity they have gained during the long Narnian years. They are no longer merely children placed upon thrones by prophecy. They are adults shaped by battle, repentance, healing, judgment, and the slow responsibility of caring for a kingdom. The Golden Age continues around them, though its abundance depends upon choices made in moments that seem small. A sentence written clearly may prevent a war. A patient answer may preserve a friendship. A bottle of cordial may save a wounded life. A horn kept silent may prove that wisdom has been stronger than fear. A sword carried north may guard the roads while diplomacy travels south. The four rulers remain siblings, bound not by royal marriage or inherited bloodline, but by shared memory and the ancient promise that brought them to Narnia. Peter, the High King, leads through magnificence and valor. Susan brings gentleness and careful judgment. Edmund offers justice strengthened by repentance. Lucy carries courage, compassion, and healing. At night, the road grows quiet beneath the stars, and the travelers rest where the grass is soft and the trees offer shelter. Far behind them, Cair Paravel stands beside the sea, its towers cooling beneath the dark. The quills have stopped moving, the cups have been gathered, and the bridles hang undisturbed in the courtyard. Above the empty council table, moonlight enters through the tall windows and lies across the parchment like a pale hand. In the northern distance, Peter rides beneath a different sky. Towards the southern kingdoms, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy continue through the calm darkness. Narnia remains held between them, spacious and living, with its fields, rivers, forests, and harbours, gathered into the care of 4 siblings who have learned that a kingdom may be restored by victory, but can endure only through patience. The first reign is remembered as an age of abundance and order. The Golden Age is remembered as the season when 4 children became adults, and beneath the towers of Cair Paravel, where the sea grows softer against the shore, the names of Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy remain quietly joined to the long peace of Narnia. Fields, rivers, forests, and harbours now rested within the care of 4 siblings who had learned that victory might restore a kingdom, while patience alone could help it endure. The first reign was remembered as an age of abundance and order, when the old life of Narnia was permitted to breathe again beneath a warmer sky. At Cair Paravel, morning arrived softly from the eastern sea, laying a pale brightness across the towers and the long terraces above the water. You are standing beneath the castle walls as the first messengers come ashore, carrying news from the forest, the river valleys, and the distant coast. A badger has travelled through the night from the western woods, with leaves clinging to his fur and a careful message beneath his paw. 2 birds wait upon the parapet, their feathers stirred by the salt wind, while a horse from the northern road lowers his head beside the gate. From the river comes a beaver in a dark, water-sheened coat, and from the coastal villages arrives a mouse wrapped in a tiny travelling cloak. They speak in different voices, yet their messages form a single understanding of the realm, whose life reaches far beyond the castle. Peter receives reports concerning roads and borders, Susan listens to disputes among households, Edmund asks about stores and bridges, and Lucy attends to those who are ill. No parchment office governs these mornings, and no modern bureaucracy defines the work of the Pevensies within their kingdom. Their rule is shown through court scenes, journeys, battles, feasts, and personal decisions, each occasion revealing how authority moves between people. You watch the royal household gather beneath carved beams while the sea murmurs below, and every speaking creature is treated as part of the council. The children who once entered Narnia through a wardrobe have become rulers within a world whose customs are older than their own memories. Even so, their authority depends upon trust between humans and talking animals, since neither group can keep Narnia safe by itself. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver remember the witch's reign, when the older life of the country was pressed beneath perpetual winter. Their memories reach back to roads buried in snow, silent branches, and lamps burning in houses where spring seemed impossible. The beavers speak without bitterness, though the long winter remains within their voices like a cold stone carried beneath the tongue. Nearby, a horse listens with one ear turned towards the open courtyard, remembering a time when ordinary animals moved beside talking beasts without fully sharing their speech. Narnia contains both talking animals and ordinary animals, and the distinction belongs to the deep mystery of its creation rather than to human judgment. You see rabbits moving beneath the hedges, while a grey horse speaks quietly with a centaur near the stable doors. A flock of ordinary birds rises from the grass, and among them a talking jackdaw gives directions to a messenger from the hills. The kingdom includes horses, beavers, badgers, mice, and birds who speak, remember, advise, quarrel, celebrate, and mourn. Their presence makes the royal court unlike any court in England, because the boundaries between human society and the living world remain open. Beyond Cair Paravel, forests spread beneath the morning light, and beech leaves move in a warm breeze above the road. The leaves turn their lighter undersides towards the sky, so that the woodland seems covered with small, silver-green waves. Moss gathers beneath travelling boots, yielding gently under each step and releasing the cool fragrance of damp earth. At the edge of the path, roots rise like knotted fingers, while young ferns unfold beside stones warmed by the returning sun. A thrush sings from somewhere unseen, and the sound passes through the branches with a clear sweetness that belongs to no human musician. The breeze carries the smell of bread, apples, and wood smoke from a nearby settlement, where ovens have been lit before sunrise. You pass a wall built from rough stones, each one darkened by rain and softened by lichen. Along the lower ground, stream water moves over pale stones, making a sound so steady that conversation becomes almost unnecessary. The woodland floor holds fallen petals, broken twigs, acorn shells, and the faint tracks of animals that travelled before dawn. Farther off, the sea gives a low answer to the stream, joining two kinds of water beneath the same mild sky. A royal progress begins after breakfast, taking the Pevensies beyond the castle and along the old road beside the river. Susan rides near a company of birds, who report that a bridge has been damaged where the current meets the eastern meadow. Peter travels with horses and centaurs towards the hills, while Edmund follows a badger who knows a shorter path through the beech woods. Lucy walks for much of the way, speaking with mice and dryads, whose concerns include the health of trees and the safety of hidden springs. The progress reveals that Narnia is held together by many speaking peoples, not only by its human sovereigns. Dwarfs work in the hill country, fauns keep paths through the meadows, and centaurs read the heavens above the open grasslands. Giants inhabit the farther heights, where snow lingers in shaded valleys even after spring has returned to the lower country. Dryads dwell among the trees, and naiads belong to the rivers, pools, and springs that carry life through Narnia. These beings are connected with the living natural world, not merely placed within it as visitors or decorations. A dryad may speak of a branch as part of herself, while a naiad understands the river as a moving body with many voices. The forest offers refuge to those who need to disappear, yet it also contains old dangers that remain untouched by human maps. Some paths lead into clearings where no traveller should linger after sunset, and certain pools reflect more than the sky above them. The Pevensies learn to ask before entering unfamiliar places, because kingship cannot make every ancient power obedient. Their progress follows the river through meadows bright with buttercups, then turns towards low hills marked by hawthorn and heather. At each village, animals and people gather beside the road, bringing questions, gifts, warnings, and small accounts of ordinary life. A mouse describes grain stores threatened by damp, while a fawn speaks of a broken boundary stone near the southern pasture. From the coast comes a fisherman carrying word of wreckage found beyond a reef, and from the forest comes news of wolves moving north. Every report enlarges the kingdom in the minds of the rulers, until Narnia becomes less a territory than a network of relationships. The children listen to animals whose memories extend before the witch's winter, into a time when older songs were still sung openly. An aged badger recalls orchards where apples remained upon the branches until the first frost, and a magpie remembers markets full of coloured cloth. Mrs. Beaver speaks of the first signs of thaw, when water appeared beneath the snow and the roofs began to drip. Mr. Beaver remembers hidden journeys through the woods, carrying messages between families who could no longer meet in daylight. A horse remembers roads covered in ice, and a bird remembers branches that broke beneath the weight of frozen rain. Their recollections are not arranged as official history, because memory in Narnia travels through stories, gestures, songs, and names. You hear the past spoken beside the river, with the current slipping over pale stones and the breeze shifting through reeds. A broad beach casts a patterned shade across the bank, and warm leaves tremble above the quiet faces gathered beneath it. The smell of bread comes from a basket placed upon the grass, joined by the sweetness of apples cut into thick slices. Wood smoke drifts from cottages beyond the meadow, losing its sharpness as it mingles with the scent of flowering herbs. A frog calls once from the shallows, and the water answers with small movements around the reeds. The air is warm enough for coats to be folded over arms, although the shadows still retain a coolness from the long winter. Bees move heavily among blue flowers, their low humming hidden beneath the voices of the travelers. Across the field, horses graze with lowered heads, and the ordinary animals remain peaceful beside those who can speak. The quiet scene holds no single center, for the river, the trees, the animals, and the people share the same breathing country. Here, the old world of Narnia seems to remember itself through every texture, sound, and shifting patch of light. At noon, the royal party reaches a meadow where a dispute is formed between a group of dwarfs and several farmers. A fence has been moved during the winter, and both sides claim the same strip of ground beside an ancient ash tree. Peter listens first, allowing the dwarf spokesman to explain the old boundary, while Susan asks the farmers where their own records begin. No one produces a document that settles the matter, because the boundary was once maintained through custom and shared memory. A dryad speaks from the ash tree, describing how the fence stood before the witches' winter buried the lower fields. The testimony does not end the dispute by magic, yet it changes the manner in which both sides regard one another. Edmund proposes that the land remain shared until the harvest, and Lucy suggests that a new marker be placed where the roots will not be harmed. The agreement is modest, but the people accept it because the rulers have listened before deciding. Such moments give the Golden Age its distinctive character, since peace is shown not as silence, but as patient attention. The friendship between the rulers and the talking animals gives the reign a social quality unlike the rule of any ordinary human dynasty. At a later stopping place, the company rests beside a stream, where the shade is deep and the grass carries the scent of rain. The beavers open their pack and distribute bread, apples, cheese, and small cakes to travelers who have walked since morning. A badger receives his portion with solemn dignity, while a mouse carries a crumb twice the size of his head towards the roots of a tree. Birds descend cautiously from the branches, and a horse allows Lucy to rest her hand against the warm side of his neck. Around the fire, wood smoke rises in slender threads, turning blue as it passes through a shaft of afternoon light. The river keeps moving over pale stones, sometimes bright as glass, and sometimes brown beneath the reflection of leaves. Moss clings to the roots near the water, softening the places where traveling boots have pressed into the soil. A distant cuckoo calls across the meadow, and somewhere beyond the ridge, a carpenter strikes wood with a measured rhythm. The meal is neither lavish nor ceremonial, yet it becomes a lesson in alliance, hospitality, and the practical meaning of peace. Sharing food allows strangers to remain in one another's company long enough for suspicion to loosen its hold. The feast that evening is larger, held in a hall whose windows look towards the darkening sea. Dwarfs sit near fawns, centaurs speak with horses, and birds occupy the beams above the tables. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver are given places near the Pevensies, not as servants or honored curiosities, but as companions of the restored kingdom. The children remember how these two helped them during the witch's reign, when courage often took the form of opening a door. Their loyalty has not vanished with victory, and neither has the debt of gratitude owed to them. A badger tells a story from before the winter, while a mouse describes the first meal eaten after the snow began to withdraw. From the upper gallery comes music made by pipes, strings, wings, and the soft tapping of wooden cups. The feast proceeds through many kinds of conversation, with no single language able to contain the full society of Narnia. In this setting, trust is not an ornament of rule, but the foundation upon which the alliance between the Pevensies and the Narnians depends. The humans cannot understand every danger without the animals, and the animals cannot restore their country without human courage and judgment. Peace becomes practical when warnings are believed, food is shared, roads are repaired, and old injuries are allowed to soften. Outside the hall, evening settles over the coastal land, and the last warmth of the day remains upon the stones. Salt hangs in the air above the harbour, mixed with tar, seaweed, bread, apples, and the faint smoke of cooking fires. Ropes creak against wooden posts, and small waves fold themselves upon the shore beneath the walls of Cair Paravel. A gull crosses the sky with a harsh cry, while darker birds return inland towards nests hidden among the cliffs. The light turns amber along the battlements, touching the windows one after another as the sun lowers behind the western hills. Lanterns appear beside the harbour steps, each flame trembling whenever the sea wind enters the narrow passage. The castle remains bright with voices, but the shore beyond it grows spacious and quiet under the approaching night. Cair Paravel serves as the royal centre, though the life of Narnia extends through forests, rivers, meadows, hills, and coastal lands. The castle is a meeting place rather than the whole kingdom, and its towers cannot contain the memories carried by distant paths. Beyond its walls, dryads listen within trees, naiads move beneath streams, and ordinary animals continue their quiet journeys. The farther reaches of Narnia remain only partly known, since every valley possesses its own stories, and every coast its own weather. The royal centre gives the kingdom a place to gather, while the old forests give it depth, secrecy, and continuity. You leave the castle after nightfall and follow a path beneath beech branches that shift above you in the warm breeze. Moonlight lies across the moss, making the ground appear soft and pale between the dark tree trunks. The smell of wood smoke fades behind you, though the fragrance of bread and apples remains upon the clothes of those returning from the feast. A stream moves nearby over pale stones, its silver surface broken whenever a leaf touches the current. The forest accepts the travellers without ceremony, offering shelter beneath branches that have endured many rains. Still, the darkness contains old dangers, and the path bends away from hollows where unfamiliar eyes may be watching. An owl calls beyond a moonlit clearing, then another answers from deeper among the trees. No one speaks for a while, because the forest seems to require a different kind of attention from the bright hall. The old kingdom feels older than its human rulers beneath those branches, as though Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy have entered a memory. Yet the memory is not empty, for their footsteps now belong among the many footsteps that have crossed Narnian ground. Aslan stands at the center of this world, though he is not merely its king in the human sense. He is the creator of Narnia and its central spiritual figure, the source from which its deepest order and meaning proceed. The talking beasts honor him with a familiarity that includes affection, reverence, fear, and the confidence of old friendship. Fauns, centaurs, dwarfs, giants, dryads, naiads, birds, and horses understand his presence according to their own natures. The Pevensies encounter him not as a distant emblem, but as a living authority whose purposes exceed their understanding. Aslan appears throughout the chronicles of Narnia, linking distant ages and separate journeys through a single spiritual center. His presence gives the kingdom a shape that no map can show, because the land is held together by more than roads. Under Aslan's care, spring is not only a change in temperature, but the return of a life that the witch tried to suppress. The White Witch's rule had extended perpetual winter across Narnia, freezing rivers, silencing birds, and making old growth seem forgotten. When her power is broken, water runs again, buds open, and the country begins to recover its former abundance. Spring returns gradually, with thawing soil, swollen streams, and the uncertain green of leaves appearing along the hedges. The change is felt first in small places, where moss darkens beneath melting snow and insects begin to move among roots. A stream that once carried ice now passes freely over pale stones, reflecting clouds instead of a white and empty sky. Beech leaves unfold in delicate clusters, catching the breeze with a sound like soft paper being turned. The fields become fragrant with wet grass, crushed herbs, and the distant smoke of fires lit for morning bread. Apples are stored in cool rooms, their skins carrying the faint sweetness of the orchards that will flower later. Birdsong returns in layers, beginning with isolated notes and widening into a conversation among branches, hedges, and riverbanks. At dusk, the air retains the mildness of the day, while shadows gather beneath trees still wet from the thaw. Narnia's renewal is therefore heard as much as seen, through moving water, waking animals, and the gradual loosening of frozen ground. The Pevensies grow within this restored country, and Narnian time moves according to rhythms that do not match the clocks of England. Years may pass in Narnia, while only moments seem to have gone by in the world from which the children came. The children can become adults in Narnia and return to England as children, carrying the weight of full lives inside younger bodies. Their memories of crowns, marriages, battles, journeys, and losses remain real even when the English world offers no outward sign of them. This strange movement of time makes the Golden Age feel both long and fragile, lasting for generations within Narnia and scarcely any time at all elsewhere. The four rulers acquire the dignity of adults, yet the shape of their original childhood remains woven through every decision. Their maturity comes through experience rather than through offices, forms, schedules, or the machinery of a modern state. They govern by traveling, listening, judging, remembering promises, and standing beside allies when danger approaches. In the stories told later, the Golden Age becomes the season when four children became adults. A human storyteller might place the reign within a narrow chronology, but Narnian memory allows its years to expand like a forest. The road descends towards the river, and your boots press into moss softened by the evening damp. Beech leaves pass overhead in a warm current of air, turning from green to bronze where moonlight reaches them. The water below continues its patient movement, slipping around pale stones and carrying small fragments of bark towards the coast. A faint smell of apples rises from a basket left beneath a tree, while bread cools near a cottage door farther along the path. Wood smoke settles close to the ground, mingling with the scent of wet leaves and the earthy perfume of moss. The moon shines through gaps in the branches, making narrow pools of brightness that disappear whenever clouds move across the sky. An owl calls beyond a moonlit clearing, and the sound seems to travel through the forest without becoming nearer. Somewhere in the darkness, an animal turns among fallen leaves, then remains still as the travelers pass. The night is neither entirely safe nor entirely threatening, because refuge and danger have always shared the same woodland paths. You rest beneath an old beech whose trunk divides into heavy limbs above the riverbank. The bark is ridged beneath your hand, and the ground gives slightly when your weight settles into the moss. Across the water, reeds bow and rise as the breeze moves through them, keeping time with no visible instrument. A few stars appear between the leaves, while the river holds their reflections in broken lines. The last trace of wood smoke reaches you from the distant settlement, carrying with it the comfort of ovens and occupied rooms. Bread, apples, and warm ash remain in the memory of the evening feast, though the hall itself is now far away. The forest smells of rain held in bark, of crushed grass, and of leaves beginning to decay beneath the roots. From the moonlit clearing comes a single owl call, answered by a darker slope beyond the stream. The sound does not disturb the quiet, but gives it a depth that it would otherwise lack. Here the Old Kingdom seems to breathe through many bodies at once, through trees, water, animals, and the resting forms of travelers. The forest does not belong to the rulers, although the rulers belong within the forest's older story. At dawn, the royal party continues westward, following a road that rises from the river towards a line of rounded hills. A centaur has sent word of movement among the giants, and Peter decides to see the northern passes before the matter grows serious. Susan remains with the coastal delegation, where a dispute over fishing grounds requires careful speech and knowledge of local custom. Edmund rides with Mr. Beaver, whose memory of hidden trails proves more useful than any map kept in the castle. Lucy travels among the dryads, who have noticed that several trees near the border are losing their leaves too early. The journey shows again that the kingdom depends upon attention spread across many kinds of life. A ruler who remained at Cair Paravel would hear only the portion of Narnia that reached the castle gates. By travelling, the Pevensies encounter the country as it exists beyond ceremony, among muddy roads, broken tools, frightened households, and uncertain weather. They discover that a bridge may matter more to a village than a battle won far away, and that a sick tree may threaten an entire hillside. The forest remains a place of refuge for those who fear pursuit, although its oldest paths still demand caution. During the witches' reign, families had hidden among the roots, while birds carried warnings between shelters and beavers kept passages concealed beneath the snow. After the winter ends, the same woods become places of gathering, though memories of concealment do not vanish immediately. The Narnians remember what the Pevensies did, but they also judge what the new rulers do with the peace they have inherited. Trust grows through repeated actions, through promises kept when no audience is present, and through kindness offered without ceremony. The road enters a valley where tall grass brushes against the horses' legs and small flowers open beside stones. Wind moves over the meadow in long, visible currents, bending the seed heads in waves towards the distant river. The hills appear blue beneath the morning haze, their slopes marked by paths made by deer, giants, shepherds, and travelers. Moss lies thick beneath the roots along the roadside, and dampness rises from the soil whenever a boot presses down. A farm nearby sends out the smell of fresh bread, sliced apples, and wood smoke curling from a low chimney. The horses breathe steadily, their coats warm beneath the cool air that gathers in the hollows. Birds move from fence to fence, some ordinary and silent, others speaking in brief phrases about the road ahead. A narrow stream crosses the meadow, its water clear over pale stones and cold enough to numb the fingers. Far beyond the valley, the sea remains visible as a thin brightness beneath the sky. The kingdom's many landscapes are not separate scenes, but parts of one living country, joined by water, weather, memory, and travel. That evening, the travelers reach a hilltop settlement where a small feast has been prepared beneath an open shelter. Dwarfs bring loaves from underground ovens, fauns carry jars of milk, and a family of mice offers apples from a late orchard. A horse stands near the fire, answering questions from children who have never spoken with one before. The meal is simple, but the gathering contains the abundance remembered from the first reign. Stories pass around the tables, and each story places the Pevensies within the wider memory of Narnia. One account describes Peter's courage, another recalls Susan's fairness, and a third remembers Edmund's patience during a difficult winter crossing. Lucy is praised for listening to dryads, naiads, animals, and people with equal seriousness. The speakers do not make the rulers perfect, because Narnian stories preserve mistakes as carefully as triumph. Their reign is remembered through relationships, and particularly through the friendship between the rulers and the talking animals. That friendship gives the Golden Age its distinctive social character, making the court feel like a meeting of many peoples. Hospitality becomes a political act when a mouse is seated beside a king, or when a badger's warning alters the plans of a royal journey. Peace becomes visible in the ordinary permission to speak, disagree, ask for help, and be believed. The fire burns lower as the feast continues, and sparks rise briefly before vanishing above the roof. Night gathers around the shelter, carrying the scent of damp grass and distant forests into the circle of warmth. Moonlight rests along the hillside, touching the backs of horses and silvering the rims of wooden cups. The meadow beyond the fire is dark, except where pale flowers catch the light between the grass. A stream descends somewhere below, making a soft, continuous sound as it passes over stones hidden from view. The smell of bread remains in the air, mingled with baked apples, ash, leather, and the clean scent of night wind. Leaves shift in the beech trees along the slope, producing a low rustle that rises and fades without pattern. From the valley comes an owl's call, and the answering note seems to rise from the hill itself. The warmth of the fire reaches your hands, while the air against your face remains cool and open. Above, the stars appear more numerous than they would above an English town, because Narnia's darkness is broader and less interrupted. The old forest waits beyond the fields, offering shelter to the tired and uncertainty to those who travel without care. Later generations tell stories of this reign beside their own fires, repeating the names of Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. The stories preserve the Golden Age as a time when abundance followed hardship and order grew from restored trust. They speak of the 4 thrones at Cair, though they also speak of roads, rivers, forests, and distant villages. The royal centre remains important, yet the kingdom's memory is distributed across every place where a promise was kept. A badger's descendants may remember a conversation beneath an oak, while a family of mice preserves the account of a meal. Birds carry fragments of history across valleys, and dryads retain memories in the rings and roots of trees. Narnian time allows these memories to become deep without becoming fixed, since each generation receives the past and reshapes it through telling. The children who became adults are remembered as rulers, friends, travelers, and listeners, rather than as distant figures seated permanently upon thrones. Their reign does not erase the older world, and it does not make the forest harmless. It allows the old kingdom to continue with its dangers, its mysteries, its speaking creatures, and its ordinary animals. Aslan remains at the center of every age, appearing throughout the chronicles of Narnia and drawing separate stories towards one source. His presence joins creation, judgment, sacrifice, renewal, and return, while the Pevensies occupy only one part of the larger pattern. Their kingdom endures because they understand that sovereignty is a form of relationship, shaped by what the ruler hears and remembers. Beneath the trees, the night becomes still enough for the smallest sounds to separate themselves from one another. A leaf lands upon the stream, a horse shifts its weight, and a mouse moves carefully through the grass. The beech canopy holds the last warmth of the day, while the moss beneath traveling boots has become cool and soft. Water continues over pale stones, carrying moonlight in broken pieces between the roots. From a far settlement comes the lingering smell of wood smoke, joined by the faint sweetness of apples stored for morning. The forest air rests upon your face, neither cold nor warm, with the clean fragrance of bark and wet earth. The trees stand close together, yet small spaces open between them where silver grass grows beneath the stars. A beetle crosses the edge of the path, its shell shining briefly before it disappears beneath a curled leaf. Nothing in the woodland asks to be explained, and the quiet does not require the removal of mystery. Here Narnia feels older than its human rulers, wider than Cair, and patient enough to hold many kinds of memory. The first reign is remembered as an age of abundance and order. The Golden Age is remembered as the season when 4 children became adults. The quiet carries you from Cair, where the evening sea air has softened, towards the southern roads beyond Narnia. You stand upon a high path above the coast, and the last brightness rests along the water like a pale strip of beaten silver. Behind you, Cair grows smaller among its towers, as the road bends inland through dry country, mountains, and the long desert routes leading towards Calormen. The air loses its salt as you travel, and the cool breath of the western sea becomes a warmer wind filled with dust from distant plains. Archenland lies between Narnia and the southern lands, a kingdom allied with Narnia and guarded by mountains whose slopes descend towards harsher country. You pass beneath ridges of brown stone, where thin grasses cling to the earth and small streams lie hidden among the folds of the hills. In the distance, desert sand shines with a white glare, though the road remains shaded for a little while beneath the shoulders of the mountains. The southern journey brings Narnia into contact with a civilization that is powerful, elaborate, and politically dangerous, though its danger is often concealed beneath courtesy. You descend towards the warmer valleys of Archenland, where the roads are marked by old stones and the hoofprints of caravans. King Loon rules Archenland during the events remembered in The Horse and His Boy, keeping watch over a border shaped by trade, rumor, and war. You travel beneath a wide sky, and the mountain air becomes still as the day advances, carrying the faint, dry scent of dust and warm rock. Calormen lies south of Archenland and Narnia, beyond the mountain passes and desert routes that have carried merchants, soldiers, and fugitives for generations. The country seems to draw the light into itself, leaving the road bright and bare beneath the unmoving sun. At a southern fishing village, near the coast of Calormen, a boy named Shasta grows up beside a man called Arshish. You stand near the water with Shasta, where small boats knock gently against rough wooden posts and nets hang drying beside the houses. Arshish is a fisherman in southern Calormen, and he raises Shasta as his son, though the boy has never felt entirely at home beneath that roof. The sea air reaches you through the village, touched by brine, fish oil, old rope, and the faint smoke of cooking fires. One evening, Shasta lies near the doorway while Arshish speaks with a passing Tarkhan, a high-ranking Calormen nobleman. The conversation is formal and careful, with each title placed precisely, and Shasta listens until he understands that Arshish intends to sell him. No shout breaks the darkness around the house, and the danger arrives instead through quiet words, lowered voices, and the cold certainty of a bargain. You hear the sea moving beyond the walls, while sand slips softly beneath the door and the night wind stirs the hanging nets. Shasta has been treated as a son, yet the conversation reveals that his safety depends upon the wishes of a man who has never truly belonged to him. The boy chooses the uncertainty of flight, leaving the fishing village before the Tarkhan can take him away. You move with him through the darkness, feeling the uneven earth beneath your feet and the dry grass brushing against your ankles. Outside the stable, a large horse waits beneath the stars, its coat darkened by shadow and its breathing slow and measured. Shasta climbs onto the horse, intending only to escape, but the animal speaks, and the familiar world opens into something older and stranger. The horse calls himself Bree, revealing that he was born in Narnia before being captured and taken south as a young horse. Night settles over the road, and dust caught in Bree's coat gives him a faint, earthy scent as he turns towards the north. Bree proposes an escape across the desert, where the two of them may travel beyond the reach of Calormen authority. You feel the horse gather himself beneath you, while the village lamps fade behind, and the first pale stars appear above the southern road. Shasta and Bree leave separately from their homes, yet their paths have already begun to bend towards the same distant country. The road stretches between low hills, passing wells, abandoned watchtowers, and patches of thorn where moonlight gathers in broken pieces. Around you, the desert carries very little sound, except for hoofbeats, the faint creak of leather, and the dry whisper of wind over stones. Bree speaks of Narnia with the longing of one who remembers green valleys, clear streams, and the freedom of open pasture. You travel north beside him, though the road gives no promise of safety, and the desert offers only occasional wells for water. The cold water drawn from a roadside well seems almost miraculous after the long heat, and you drink while Bree lowers his head beside you. Farther from the coast, the air becomes thinner and the villages less frequent, while the roads divide around dunes and pale shelves of rock. Bree knows that Calormen is not merely a collection of villages, but a great civilization arranged around power, obedience, and carefully guarded privilege. You pass travelers who bow according to rank, keeping their eyes lowered before officials and nobles mounted beneath decorated canopies. Calormen society is organized around the Tisroc: nobles, officials, soldiers, merchants, and enslaved or dependent people, each held within a visible order. The morning wind brings dust across the track, and the sun rises over the plain in a colorless blaze. Within that hierarchy, formal speech carries the weight of law, and a greeting may reveal a person's position before a single question is asked. You hear elaborate titles repeated beside the wells, where merchants bargain beneath shade and soldiers watch the passing traffic. Storytelling also holds an important place in Calormen culture, preserving histories, warnings, praises, and examples of proper conduct. The road smells of heated leather and crushed herbs, while tiny insects move through the dry grass beside the water trough. Ceremony surrounds the powerful, and even an ordinary meeting may be shaped by bows, formulas, gestures, and long phrases of respect. You ride quietly beside Bree, learning that danger may be hidden inside polished manners as easily as it may appear beneath a sword. Aravis is moving through the same southern world, though she begins her journey from a house far removed from Shasta's fishing village. You stand within a noble courtyard where white walls hold the heat and a fountain murmurs beneath carved stone. Aravis is a Calormen noble girl, surrounded by rank and security, yet those advantages cannot protect her from an arranged marriage. Her intended husband is Tarkhan, a powerful nobleman chosen for her by others, and the marriage would bind her future to a decision she did not make. The courtyard rests in afternoon stillness, with bright tiles beneath your feet and the scent of roses drying in the sun. Aravis chooses to flee rather than accept the marriage, leaving behind her household, her position, and the protection that has shaped her life. You accompany her through a side passage, where servants move quietly beneath shaded arches, and the air carries incense from a nearby shrine. Her escape is not an act of comfort, because the road north is uncertain, and the desert offers no kindness to the unprepared. Beyond the walls, sunlight falls sharply upon the road, and heat rises from the pale ground in wavering layers. Aravis takes H-Win with her, a talking mare who also came from Narnia, though H-Win's history has been marked by capture and fear. The mare moves gently beneath the saddle, with dust settling along her legs and the reins making a faint sound against the leather. The two travelers leave by separate routes, carrying different kinds of knowledge and burden, while the northern horizon remains hidden beyond the plains. Aravis possesses the confidence of a noble household, but she must now depend upon caution, endurance, and H-Win's loyalty. You cross a region where the ground changes from packed earth to loose sand, and every step becomes slower beneath the intense light. Shasta has Bree's strength and experience, while Aravis knows the customs of Calormen and the habits of those who might pursue her. The paths of the four travelers begin to converge, though none yet understands how closely their stories are connected. Around you, Thorn bushes cast narrow shadows, and the only coolness comes from the cloth wrapped around your head and neck. Shasta and Bree meet Aravis and Hwin upon the road, and suspicion gradually gives way to the recognition that each pair needs the other. The meeting takes place beyond the settled coast, where the desert opens wide, and the mountains appear as a dim line in the north. Fine dust lies over the travelers' clothing, and the horses' manes are roughened by wind and sand. Shasta hears Aravis speak of pursuit, while Aravis learns that Bree understands Narnia and knows the safest routes across the dry country. Together, the four travelers form a small company, linked by escape rather than friendship and guided by a shared desire to reach the north. You hear their voices beneath the open sky, sometimes clear and formal, sometimes softened by weariness and the need to conserve water. The road passes old milestones whose inscriptions have been worn smooth, and the travelers pause whenever a distant rider appears. Calormen's power extends along these routes through messengers, soldiers, officials, and nobles whose authority is recognized far beyond the city walls. A faint haze rests over the distance, and the desert seems to tremble beneath the weight of the afternoon heat. The four companions avoid the main roads where possible, choosing narrow tracks between rocky ground and stretches of dry scrub. They know that Calormen authorities may search for Aravis, while Shasta remains vulnerable because Arshish has offered him to the passing Tarkhan. You feel the day lengthen around them, with the sun descending slowly and the shadows becoming more distinct upon the sand. At evening, the travelers rest near a well, where the water is cold beneath the stone and the wind has lost its heat. The water touches your hands as the ropes creak above the dark opening, and a bucket strikes the inner wall. Bree and Hwin speak in low voices about Narnia, recalling forests and streams that seem almost impossible beneath the southern sky. The smell of damp stone rises from the well, mingling with horse sweat leather and the dry fragrance of crushed leaves. Shasta listens to their memories, beginning to understand that his own life may have been shaped by a secret he has never been told. He has believed himself the son of Arshish, yet the story of Bree and Hwin makes the northern kingdom feel strangely familiar. Stars gather above the well, and the darkness becomes deep enough to soften the hard outline of every stone. The travelers continue northward, moving before dawn when the air is coolest, and the desert road is firm beneath the hooves. Aravis carries the fear of discovery, though she does not surrender the dignity that Calormen society has taught her to protect. You pass beneath a fading moon, and the horses' shadows move alongside you like dark, patient companions. Bree continues to guide the company, remembering fragments of the country between Calormen and Narnia from journeys made before his capture. The route rises towards broken ground, where mountains narrow the passage and force caravans to travel in long, careful lines. Cold air descends from the rocks at night, carrying the scent of mineral dust and distant pine. Archenland stands beyond these approaches, allied with Narnia and separated from Calormen by difficult terrain rather than simple distance. You look north from a stony ridge and see valleys folded one behind another, each darker than the last in the early light. King Lune governs Archenland during this part of the tale, and his kingdom remains watchful beneath the pressure of southern power. The four travelers cannot yet rest, because the road to safety leads near the capital of Calormen before turning towards the northern borders. Morning returns with a white glare over the sand, and the heat gathers quickly along the exposed slopes. Their separate routes have converged, but the danger has also become more concentrated, since Tashbarn lies ahead with its walls, guards, and crowded roads. You hear the horses breathing steadily, while straps are tightened and small stores of food are divided with careful attention. Tashbarn is the capital of Calormen, a large and wealthy city where trade and authority meet amid the coastal plain. The city appears first as a dark line upon the horizon, with towers and domes rising above walls bleached by sunlight. Incense and spices drift from Tashban's streets long before the travelers reach the gates, carried outward by the coastal wind. Within the city, Calormen's wealth is displayed through painted buildings, bright fabrics, decorated animals, and markets filled with foreign goods. You approach beneath crowded voices and painted awnings, where sellers call across one another and porters carry jars, baskets, and folded carpets. The city's streets are narrow in places, and the noise gathers between the walls until every footstep seems to belong to a larger movement. Tashban receives caravans from the desert, ships from the coast, officials from distant provinces, and nobles whose retinues fill entire courtyards. You smell cinnamon, heated metal, old wood, saffron, and the faint salt of the harbor beyond the crowded buildings. The four travelers enter the city because the road north requires them to pass through or around its great walls. They soon discover that Tashban is not only wealthy and crowded, but also watchful, with soldiers beneath archways and officials questioning strangers. Bright cloth hangs above the streets, giving brief shade while allowing strips of hard sunlight to fall across the paving stones. Aravis knows that a rank may draw attention, while Shasta fears recognition as the boy Arshish promised to the Tarkhan. Bree and Hwin must remain silent among ordinary horses, hiding the speech that would reveal their origin. The air beneath the awnings is warmer than the open road, and dust settles upon the travelers' faces despite the shade. Susan, Edmund, and Lucy are visiting Calormen as royal guests when the main escape story unfolds, while Peter is absent, fighting giants in the north. You move through the city beside foreign courts and guarded palanquins, where the presence of Narnian royalty adds another layer of tension. The palace quarters contain cool stone, patterned walls, fountains, and servants trained to make every movement appear measured and graceful. Susan, Edmund, and Lucy occupy a place of honor, yet the formal welcome cannot hide the political danger surrounding the southern court. You hear distant drums from a ceremonial procession, and the sound travels through the streets in slow waves. Calormen culture places strong emphasis on formal speech, storytelling, rank, and ceremony, and these customs shape every encounter within Tashban. A nobleman's greeting may last several minutes, while a simple request becomes a carefully arranged exchange of titles and blessings. Incense burns beside a doorway, and its smoke curls beneath a painted ceiling before disappearing into the bright air. The city's order depends upon the Tisroc and the hierarchy beneath him, including nobles, officials, soldiers, merchants, and dependent people. You pass servants carrying water jars, soldiers bearing curved blades, and merchants seated among bales marked with distant signs. The splendor of Tashban is inseparable from the unequal structure that sustains it, though the streets present ceremony before hardship. Warm air rises from the paving stones, and the smell of animals mingles with perfume, dust, and sea wind. Shasta becomes separated from Bree in the confusion of the city, and the boy is drawn into a dangerous misunderstanding. He is mistaken for a person of importance, and the attention surrounding him briefly conceals the fear he carries from Arshish and the Tarkhan. You stand among palace gardens where water runs over blue tiles, while beyond the walls the city continues its restless movement. The gardens offer shade, but no true refuge, because every gate is watched and every unknown face can become the subject of gossip. Aravis moves through another part of Tashban, relying upon quick judgment and the knowledge of how nobles speak and travel. She and Hwin must find a way out before her flight becomes known to those who would return her to Ahoshta Tarkhan. The afternoon light reaches the palace walls, turning their pale surfaces gold while shadows collect beneath the galleries. Bree searches for Shasta, and Hwin follows Aravis through streets where servants, merchants, and soldiers press closely around them. The four travelers are separated within the city, yet each remains guided by the same northern direction. You hear the harbor beyond the buildings, where ropes strain against masts and gulls call over the movement of cargo. Tashbaan's wealth has drawn people from many regions, making the city crowded enough to conceal fugitives and dangerous enough to lose them. A merchant may pass between two courtyards with spices from the east, while a soldier watches from a balcony above. The city smells of pepper, rosewater, hot stone, and the dark water gathered in shaded cisterns. Shasta eventually escapes the palace district and finds Bree again, though the way out requires patience and careful movement. Aravis and Hwyn also reach the outskirts, where the walls give way to tracks leading inland and northward. You leave the crowded voices beneath painted awnings behind, entering a quieter road lined with dry trees and low boundary walls. The desert waits beyond Tashbaan, but the travelers now understand that the city's danger has changed the shape of their journey. They have seen the power of Calormen at its center, where ceremony covers ambition and wealth moves beside fear. Evening settles upon the coast, and the white glare fades from the sand until the ground reflects a soft grey light. Bree carries dust caught in his horsehair, while Hwyn walks with lowered head and steady attention. Shasta looks back towards Tashbaan, whose towers remain visible above the walls, and whose lamps begin to appear one by one. You hear the distant city like a low, continuous murmur, mixed with the surf and the faint ringing of harness. The four travelers move north again, now more closely joined and more aware of the forces following behind them. Their route passes through dry country before rising towards the mountains, where Archenland lies between Calormen and Narnia. You follow a track bordered by thorn and gravel, and the night air cools the sweat along your face. Shasta begins to sense that his flight is not merely an escape from Arshish, but the beginning of a return towards a forgotten home. Bree's memories become more precise as the road turns familiar, and the horse speaks of Narnian fields beyond the northern ridges. A thin wind moves across the road, bringing the scent of stones that have released their heat after sunset. Aravis travels beside them without the protection of her former household, yet her courage has acquired a quieter and more durable quality. She has left behind rank and security rather than accept a forced marriage, and the desert has made that choice visible in every tired step. You rest beside a low wall while the horses feed upon sparse grass gathered from the roadside. The moon shines upon the stones, and small grains of sand gather in the folds of blankets and clothing. The travelers rise before dawn, crossing a broad plain where the mountains appear nearer with each hour. Their passage remains urgent because Calormen riders may follow, and news of their escape can travel swiftly along official roads. You hear only the measured rhythm of hooves, the creak of saddles, and the dry brush of reins against the horses' necks. Beyond the plain, the road enters a narrow valley, and the heat gives way to shadows cast by steep rock. Archenland's northern boundaries begin to feel close, though the travelers still face uncertainty about those who may govern the passes. Cool air moves down from the mountains, touching your hands after the long warmth of the southern road. King Loon's kingdom is allied with Narnia, yet its position between Calormen and the northern land makes it vulnerable to pressure from both sides. The travelers continue beneath cliffs streaked with iron and pale mineral deposits, while eagles circle far above the narrow path. Water becomes more reliable in the valleys, and the sound of small streams replaces the dry silence of the desert. You kneel beside a clear pool, where cold water runs over smooth stones and leaves a faint metallic taste upon your lips. Shasta's hidden identity begins to emerge as the journey moves towards the northern kingdoms, though its full meaning remains beyond his understanding. Bree recognizes signs of Narnia in the landscape, and Hwyn grows calmer whenever green shoots appear beside the road. The four travelers are no longer strangers joined by accident. but companions carried forward by the same movement of escape and discovery. Mist gathers in shaded hollows at dawn, and the horse's breath appears briefly before dissolving in the warmer air. Behind them, Tashbaan remains the great southern center, with its harbor, wealth, officials, soldiers, merchants, and crowded ceremonial streets. Ahead, Archenland offers a passage towards Narnia, where the coast, forests, and old stories await beyond the mountains. You climb a final slope and look back over Calormen, its deserts fading into pale distance beneath the broad southern sky. The road behind you holds the marks of many journeys, and the road ahead carries the memory of every kingdom crossed. Shasta has escaped from Arshish. Bree has begun the long return from captivity, and Aravis has chosen freedom over an arranged marriage. You stand among the travelers in the cooling evening, with dust along your clothing and the northern wind moving gently across the pass. Far below, a stream reflects the last light, while the mountain stones retain a little warmth beneath your resting hand. The southern kingdom has not vanished, because its language, customs, dangers, and splendor remain within the story they carry north. You listen to the quiet road as darkness gathers, hearing the horses shift their weight and distant water move among the stones. The journey beyond the desert has brought Narnia into contact with a civilization of immense power, elaborate beauty, and dangerous political purpose. Archenland stands between these worlds, allied with Narnia and ruled by King Lune during the years of Shasta's remarkable passage. A cooler wind descends from the heights, carrying the scent of grass and rock where the southern dust can no longer reach. The travelers continue into the north, while the lights of Calormen recede behind them and the first darkness of the mountains closes gently around the road. You remain upon that road for a little longer, beneath the quiet stars, with the warmth of the desert fading and the unknown country opening before you. You are Shasta, riding northward beneath a sky crowded with stars, while Bree's hoofbeats mark the dark road ahead. Bree remembers the north as a home he cannot yet see, a country of green valleys, cold streams, and high ridges beyond the desert. His memory is proud but uncertain, for the years have carried him far from Narnia and Archenland, and he fears that neither land will receive him kindly. You know very little of Narnia, and the name still sounds like a distant story told beside a winter hearth. Bree speaks of it quietly, describing forests where branches meet above the road, and hills where the wind smells of pine. He tells you that Archenland lies near the northern mountains, beneath the rule of King Lune, and that its people are accustomed to courage. You listen while your body learns the steady movement of a horse, though the saddle remains unfamiliar beneath you. The desert road lengthens before you, pale beneath the moon and vanishing among low ridges where no house or watchtower appears. Your hands hold the dry leather reins, and every small movement of Bree's shoulders passes through the saddle into your tired frame. Sand receives the sound of the journey until the hoofbeats become soft, distant taps, almost indistinguishable from the murmuring night wind. The warm air rests beneath a hard sky, carrying the faint odor of dust, leather, and the horse's heated coat. A little behind you, the desert lies in long folds, silvered by starlight and broken only by thorn bushes, stones, and occasional dark hollows. Nothing grows high enough to shelter a traveler, and every direction seems open beneath the immense Calormen sky. You feel the reins move against your fingers whenever Bree changes pace, and the leather has grown warm from your hands. Dust gathers along the edge of the saddle blanket, while small grains settle in the seams of your clothing. The smell of dates lingers from the provisions packed before departure, mingling with dry leather and horse sweat in the still air. Bree's first lessons are simple, but he gives them with the solemn patience of a teacher who has taught himself not to panic. You learn to keep your knees relaxed, to sit with the horse rather than against him, and to avoid pulling sharply upon the reins. Bree explains that a rider who fights every movement soon exhausts both himself and the animal beneath him. He shows you how to descend quietly, mount without startling the horse, and judge a safe place for rest. The desert teaches the remaining lessons with greater severity. You learn to keep water covered, travel during the cooler hours, and read the color of the distant air. Bree teaches you that a dark line upon the horizon may be a ridge, a watchtower, or merely a trick of heat. He knows which valleys collect the morning mist, which wells are guarded, and which roads are used by soldiers. When the sun rises, you ride with a cloth wrapped around your head, while Bree keeps his eyes narrowed against the brightness. At midday, you seek the shadow of a rock or the narrow shade cast by a broken wall. The horses are watered sparingly, and the travelers move again when the desert begins to cool. Each day, the distance between Calormen and the northern kingdoms becomes a little greater. Each night, Bree repeats the names of Narnia and Archenland, as though speaking them will draw the countries closer. You hear Narnia beneath the hoofbeats and Archenland beneath the wind, though neither place has yet appeared before your eyes. Bree remains proud, even when the road leaves him trembling with weariness. He carries himself like a horse who once belonged to a noble stable, and his voice retains the confidence of long practice. Yet beneath that pride lies a deep anxiety, because Bree fears that returning to his homeland will reveal him as a coward. He dreads the judgment of horses who have never worn a master's bridle, and fears being asked why he remained silent for so long. That fear becomes a burden almost as heavy as the saddle he carries. You begin to understand that Bree does not merely desire freedom. He wishes to return north as the horse he remembers, brave in speech, firm in manner, and worthy of the land from which he came. The road offers no answer, and the desert continues beneath its hard light. You are standing beside a shallow fire at evening, with Bree's reins looped around your wrist, and the last heat of the day fading from the stones. The flame is small enough to conceal, yet bright enough to warm your fingers. A leather water bag rests beside the ashes, and a folded cloak smells of sun, dust, and the animal warmth of the journey. Bree's shadow reaches across the ground whenever he lowers his head to drink. Far off, a jackal calls once, and the sound disappears among the dunes. The air remains warm after sunset, though a thin coolness begins to gather around your ankles and beneath your sleeves. You hear sand moving over sand, a faint brushing sound that continues after every stronger breath of wind. The reins feel dry and fibrous beneath your fingers, while the saddle straps creak whenever Bree shifts his weight. Above the fire, the sky is hard and clear, with no cloud to soften the stars. The desert holds its heat close to the earth, but the heavens seem cold and immeasurably distant. Your provisions taste of salt, grain, and dried dates, and the fruit's sweetness remains upon your tongue after the meal. Bree stands in silence for a time, listening towards the south. The road has become a narrow trail among low dunes, and every mark upon the sand may be erased before morning. Travelers who wish to remain unseen must move quickly, speak little, and leave no clear trace behind them. The flight now includes another rider, another horse, and a story more dangerous than any you have yet heard. Aravis has escaped from her home, and H-Win carries her northward with the same determined secrecy that brought Bree and Shasta across the desert. Aravis is the daughter of a Calormen nobleman, raised among marble courtyards, guarded doors, formal meals, and servants trained to obey. Her escape has taken her beyond the protection of rank, though her bearing remains composed and her speech exact. At first, Aravis regards you as socially beneath her, a boy without noble clothes, noble manners, or any clear knowledge of the world into which you have entered. She does not understand your ignorance of Narnia, and she finds Bree's explanations more useful than your questions. H-Win, however, recognizes something familiar in Bree, and the two horses speak openly when ordinary humans cannot hear them. They discuss roads, patrols, water, and the conduct of their riders, in voices low enough to pass for the shifting of bridles. Among ordinary humans, Bree and Hwin conceal their speech carefully, allowing only an occasional snort, stamp, or restless turn of the head. The horses know that a single plainly spoken sentence could bring soldiers running across the sand. Their silence among humans becomes part of the discipline of escape. Aravis and Shasta ride near one another only when the road permits, while Bree and Hwin travel with their ears turned towards every distant sound. The company uses speed and secrecy to avoid capture. They leave the main road when hoof marks suggest that soldiers have passed recently, returning only after the sand has swallowed the danger. Sometimes they ride by starlight, crossing open ground beneath the warm night air and a hard sky. Sometimes they shelter in a dry ravine, where dust settles upon their cloaks and horse sweat fills the narrow darkness. You feel the reins slipping softly through your fingers while Bree chooses the safest ground. Aravis keeps her face turned towards the north, though her thoughts remain divided between the home she abandoned and the country she hopes to reach. Hwin moves with patient steadiness, and her breath rises in pale clouds whenever dawn finally cools the desert. The two horses become watchful companions before either rider quite notices the change. Bree teaches Hwin the routes he remembers, while Hwin notices tracks, stones, and distant movement that Bree might overlook. Aravis shares provisions from her noble household, and you learn to accept her generosity without feeling diminished by it. The travelers remain fugitives, but their separate needs slowly begin to fit together. At night, the horses speak more freely. Bree tells Hwin that the northern kingdoms once seemed close enough to smell from the borderlands. Hwin answers that every country appears nearer in memory than it does upon the road. Their voices are low and thoughtful, becoming another quiet rhythm beneath the stars. You lie awake near the embers, hearing only fragments through the darkness. Bree mentions Narnia, Archenland, King Loon, and the mountain passes beyond the desert. Hwin speaks of cold grass, clear water, and the sound of rain upon green leaves. You have never seen those things, yet they begin to form within your mind. Narnia becomes less a name and more a direction. Archenland becomes a line of hills waiting beyond the southern dust. The journey crosses the desert between Calormen and the northern kingdoms, and each mile carries the company farther from familiar danger. The desert is broad enough to make every rider appear small, with dunes extending like sleeping waves beneath the moon. Patches of hard ground interrupt the sand, giving the horses firmer footing and allowing their pace to quicken. At such times, Bree runs with the pride of an animal who has remembered himself. His mane lifts in the wind, his breathing deepens, and the road passes beneath him in a rapid sequence of pale stones. You bend forward and hold the reins lightly, trusting the lessons he has repeated. Hwin keeps close behind, while Aravis lowers herself over the saddle and watches the darkness ahead. The speed is dangerous, but remaining still is more dangerous. Each distant lantern may belong to a patrol, and each faint line of dust may reveal riders approaching from the south. You travel until the horses are damp with sweat beneath their saddles. Then the company turns aside, finds a hollow among the dunes, and waits without lighting a fire. Warm horse sweat lingers around you, mixed with dates, dust, and the dry leather of the bridles. Bree's fear of appearing cowardly returns whenever the group pauses. He worries that Hwin will think him timid, that Aravis will despise him, or that you will mistake caution for weakness. Yet caution keeps the horses alive. Bree knows the desert better than any of you, and his knowledge is often the reason the company escapes. His pride resists the admission, but his actions become quieter and more generous. He no longer speaks only of himself, beginning to ask whether you have eaten, whether Aravis has water, and whether Hwin's shoes remain sound. The fugitives become companions by degrees, through shared fatigue, danger, and the small arrangements that make continued travel possible. The southern sun rises pale through the dust, and the long road takes its color from the surrounding plain. You ride with your shoulders stiff from sleep and your fingers marked by the reins. Bree's ears turn towards every unfamiliar sound, while H-Wind's head remains lowered against the morning glare. Aravis carries herself with the discipline of a noble household, though dust has dulled her clothing and the road has altered her manner. She begins to speak to you without the old distance. Her questions concern the places where you grew up, the work you were made to do, and the strange circumstances that carried you beside Bree. You answer simply, because much of your life has contained more uncertainty than explanation. Aravis listens with an attention that slowly replaces judgment. The difference between your stations remains, but the desert has given both of you the same thirst and the same need for shade. H-Win and Bree continue their secret conversations whenever the road is empty. They discuss the temperament of their riders and agree that both are stubborn in different ways. Bree calls you inexperienced, though his tone carries affection rather than contempt. H-Win observes that Aravis has been taught to command, but not to depend upon others. The horses find this amusing and troublesome, and their quiet voices pass between them like wind through dry grass. By afternoon, the company reaches a rise from which the land changes. The desert begins to break into cultivated ground, with palms appearing near distant wells and dark lines marking fields beyond the open sand. The air carries more moisture, though dust still rests upon every cloak and strap. You see walls in the far distance, pale and immense beneath the sun. Tashbaan lies ahead, crowded upon its island and surrounded by water, bridges, towers, and the noisy life of Calormen. Bree knows that the city must be crossed or avoided, and neither choice promises safety. The road bends among gardens and market villages before joining the traffic moving towards Tashbaan. Caravans approach from every direction, bringing woven cloth, jars, spices, animals, and voices from regions you have never imagined. Ordinary humans surround the horses, so Bree and H-Win become silent again. Their speech disappears beneath the creak of carts and the calls of drivers. You hear city bells before seeing the gates, deep notes traveling across the warm air. Market cries overlap from every side, rising and falling like a restless tide. The smell of dates, dust, and horse sweat grows stronger as the road fills with people. Bree's dry leather reins press against your palms, while the crowd narrows around the animals. Tashbaan's walls rise ahead, pale stone glowing beneath a sun that seems to rest upon the battlements. The gate is crowded with guards, merchants, servants, petitioners, and travelers waiting to pass within. Aravis lowers her veil and adopts the posture of a young woman accustomed to being obeyed. You attempt to copy Bree's calm, though your eyes move constantly from one face to another. H-Win keeps her head lowered, hiding the alertness that makes her unlike an ordinary horse. Bree speaks only through small movements, directing you with the pressure of his knees and the slight turn of his neck. The company enters the city among a procession of people who appear to possess greater rank. For a short time, the crowd mistakes the travelers for persons connected with a noble household. This mistake separates the party before anyone can correct it. You are drawn away by attendants who believe you are Prince Corin of Archenland. The resemblance is astonishing, because Corin has a face and build almost identical to your own. You are taken through streets of colored awnings, carved balconies, and tall houses whose upper rooms overlook the traffic below. No explanation you offer reaches the attendants, who are too hurried and too certain to listen. They call you Corin, and the name falls around you with the weight of a life already prepared. Prince Corin is the younger son of King Loon, ruler of Archenland, and his position has brought you into danger without your understanding why. You have never met Corin, yet the city seems to know him through your face. In a quiet courtyard, you find the true Prince Corin hiding behind a screen of woven reeds. He has escaped his attendants, and his expression carries the relief of someone delighted to discover that another person can bear his confusion. Corin is bold, restless, and accustomed to turning trouble into an adventure. He examines you with frank curiosity, then laughs softly at the astonishment of the attendants who have followed you into the courtyard. For a moment, you glimpse the life you might have lived. You imagine halls, teachers, horses trained for war, servants carrying messages, and a father named King Loon waiting beyond the northern mountains. The vision is brief, because Tashbaan remains full of sudden danger. Corin tells you that his absence will soon be discovered, and that those around you may not forgive the deception. You do not understand how to inhabit a prince's life, but you understand that the city is not safe. The bells sound above the roofs, and market cries drift through the courtyard walls. Tashbaan surrounds you with voices, stone, heat, and movement. The stranger's face beneath your own becomes both protection and threat. You move through a narrow street where sunlight falls in bright strips between the buildings. Colored cloth hangs overhead, stirring gently whenever a breath of air reaches the city. The paving stones are warm beneath the horses' hooves, and dust gathers in the seams between them. Bells ring from towers at different distances, so that one note fades while another begins. Merchants call from shaded stalls, offering dates, copper vessels, dyed wool, sweet cakes, and polished knives. The smell of dates mingles with dust, horse sweat, incense, and the sharp odor of animals kept too long in crowded courtyards. Your hands remain upon the dry leather reins, though the press of people often forces you to release them. Bree's coat is hot beneath your fingers, and his breathing sounds louder in the narrow streets. H-Wind disappears from sight, then appears again beside a wall where Aravis has drawn her veil close around her face. The company loses one another repeatedly among servants, carts, soldiers, and noble processions. A sudden cry sends several birds rising from a roof. Their wings beat above the street while the crowd shifts without making room. You are pushed beneath an archway where the air is cooler and smells faintly of water. A fountain murmurs in the center of a courtyard, almost hidden beneath the noise of Tashbaan. For a moment, the city seems peaceful, but the peace is only a fold within the greater confusion. Aravis and the horses are carried towards another part of the city after being mistaken for people of higher rank. The error is useful and perilous, granting them passage while also placing them under closer observation. You remain with Corin, whose attendants search every street for the prince they have lost. Corin understands that his resemblance to you may allow both of you to escape notice, provided neither speaks too plainly. He tells you about Archenland in a quick, confidential voice. The country lies north of Calormen, where mountain roads descend into green valleys and the people on a King Loon. Corin's knowledge is personal rather than formal, full of remembered rooms, familiar horses, and quarrels with his elder brother. You listen as though his words were pieces of your own missing history. The mistaken identity gives you a glimpse of the life you might have lived, but it also sends you onward. You cannot remain in Tashbaan because soldiers now search for Corin, while others may be searching for you. The city gates become the next difficulty. Corin knows hidden passages, service entrances, and streets where guards are more interested in merchants than princes. You move quickly through courtyards and alleys, keeping your face lowered whenever a uniform appears. Bree and H-Win, separated from you, rely upon the same principles of speed and secrecy. Aravis guides H-Win through a procession of servants, pretending that the mayor belongs to a distant household. Bree follows at a careful distance, silent among ordinary humans and anxious that his fear might show. The horses later reunite with you outside the city, beyond the walls where the traffic thins into scattered caravans. The walls of Tashbaan remain behind you, immense and sunlit, while the road towards Archenland opens across lower ground. You are standing beyond the city at dusk, with the last bells fading behind the walls and the desert wind moving through the roadside grass. Aravis finds you first, riding beside H-Win with dust upon her veil and a tear in one sleeve. Her expression remains composed, although the strain of the city has settled around her eyes. Bree approaches from another road, carrying the same proud posture he wore in the morning. H-Wind touches his shoulder with her nose, and the gesture says more than either horse can safely speak. Bree asks whether you have been treated as a prince. You tell him about Corin, and the horses exchange a look that ordinary humans would not have understood. Aravis listens while you describe the courtyard, the attendants, and the younger son of King Loon. She knows enough of Archenland to understand the danger. If the Calormen authorities learn that Corin has escaped and that you resemble him, the roads north will be watched. The party must leave Tashbarn before the mistake becomes an accusation. They travel after sunset, when the city lamps become small points behind them and the open country receives the darkness. The road towards Archenland leads between fields, dry channels, and low groves of palms. Here the sand lies thinner, and the horses' hoofbeats strike the harder ground with a clearer sound. You feel the change through the reins and saddle, and Bree alters his pace to preserve the animal's strength. Aravis shares the water without being asked. H-Wind keeps close to your side, while Bree takes the outer edge of the road where approaching riders can be seen first. The travelers are still fugitives, but the arrangement now resembles a household moving together. Bree carries the route in memory, H-Wind watches the rear, Aravis measures the roads and settlements, and you learn to recognize danger before it reaches the group. The journey gradually changes the travelers from separate fugitives into companions. The change is not announced, and no one speaks of it directly. It appears in the way Aravis waits when your saddle strap loosens, and in the way Bree slows when your legs begin to ache. It appears when H-Wind turns back for a dropped water flask, and when you stand beside Bree while he drinks. The northern road remains difficult, but the company no longer crosses it as four unrelated lives. The warm night air settles over the fields, less dry than the desert and faintly scented with grass. A hard sky still stretches above you, though the stars appear lower beyond the dark outline of the northern hills. The horses breathe steadily, and their hooves make alternating sounds upon sand, soil, and loose stone. Dry leather reins pass from one hand to another as the riders change position. In the distance, a village bell marks the hour, followed by the bark of a dog and the rustle of palms. The smell of dates remains in the provisions, joined now by damp earth and crushed green leaves. A light mist gathers in a shallow hollow, cooling your face as you pass. Bree's mane brushes your wrist, and H-Wind's flank gives off a gentle heat whenever she draws near. Aravis's cloak moves softly behind her, carrying the faint scent of dust and cedar oil. Tashbarn lies behind you, but its bells seem to continue across the night. The city has entered your memory as a place of walls, crowds, noise, and sudden changes of fortune. Corin's face remains within your thoughts, bright and familiar despite the shortness of your meeting. You wonder how many roads he has taken beneath the same stars, and how easily a prince can disappear when he chooses. Bree continues towards the north, where Narnia and Archenland wait beyond the darkness. The road climbs gradually, and the air becomes cooler as the party approaches the first northern heights. Grass appears in thin patches beside the stones. The desert has not vanished entirely, but its dust no longer covers every leaf, and small flowers show themselves near the channels of water. You ride more securely now. The saddle no longer seems to move beneath you, and your hands respond to Bree without conscious thought. He notices the improvement and says that you may become a tolerable rider if you survive the remaining roads. His words are stern, but his voice carries quiet satisfaction. Bree is still anxious to return to his homeland. He imagines Narnia as he knew it, though time may have altered the forests and roads beyond recognition. He remembers the north as a home he can describe, but cannot yet see. The memory gives strength to his legs and fear to his heart. If the country has changed, he may find himself a stranger. If it has not changed, he may have to answer for the years spent among ordinary humans. His fear of appearing cowardly remains central to him, shaping even his smallest decisions. He rides faster when danger approaches, but also when silence gives him too much time to doubt himself. Hwin understands this and stays near him. She does not mock his pride, because she knows that courage can be hidden beneath an awkward display of confidence. You begin to understand it as well. The company rests beside a stream whose water runs dark beneath the reeds. You kneel at the bank and let the coolness pass over your hands. The stream smells of mud, roots, and the green growth gathered along its edges. Bree drinks deeply, then lifts his head with water shining upon his muzzle. Hwin stands further downstream, where moonlight lies broken across the current. Aravis removes her shoes and places her feet in the shallows, remaining silent while the cold water moves around her ankles. The night has lost the severe dryness of the desert. Moist air gathers beneath the stars, and insects sing among the reeds with a delicate, continuous sound. Your cloak feels heavier from the dampness. The leather reins have softened slightly, though their familiar roughness remains beneath your fingers. A distant owl calls from a tree, and the answer comes from somewhere beyond the stream. The smell of horse sweat has faded beneath the scent of water and grass. The travelers eat dates, flatbread, and dried meat while the horses rest nearby. No fire is lit, because the open country may still contain watchers from Tashbaan. Darkness gathers close to the ground, but the stream provides a quiet boundary between the road behind and the road ahead. Aravis tells you that her home lies far to the south, beyond the route now closed to her. She speaks of her noble father without tenderness, and of the marriage from which she escaped without regret. Her upbringing has taught her command, caution, and the proper distance between ranks. The journey teaches her dependence, though she accepts the lessons slowly. You remain beneath her in the social order she once trusted, yet the road has made your knowledge valuable. You know how ordinary people speak, how servants move, and how a boy without rank may pass unnoticed. Aravis knows how noble households think, how guards interpret clothing, and how suspicion behaves among the powerful. Bree knows the roads, Hwin knows patience, and together these small forms of knowledge become greater than any single person's certainty. The travelers rise before dawn and continue towards Archenland. The first light touches the eastern sky, but the northern hills remain blue and indistinct. You ride between Bree and Hwin, with Aravis ahead upon the narrow track. The horses' hoofbeats are clear upon the stony ground, no longer swallowed entirely by sand. Dry leather reins lie across your hands, and the morning chill has stiffened their surface. Bree's breath rises in pale threads, though the day will soon become warm. The smell of dates comes from a small pouch at your belt, mixed with dust and the clean odor of grass. Birds move through the low branches beside the road. Their calls are unfamiliar, but they sound less lonely than the desert wind. A shepherd watches from a distant slope, and the party lowers its pace until he turns away. Secrecy remains necessary. Even beyond Tashbaan, Calormen riders may search for the escaped nobleman's daughter, the missing prince, or the strangers who resemble him. You pass through small settlements without speaking more than required. Among ordinary humans, Bree and Hwin remain merely horses. Their ears and eyes reveal their intelligence, but their mouths remain closed. At night, when no human camp lies nearby, they speak again. Bree describes northern grass with a tenderness he would deny if questioned. Hwin asks whether Narnia will recognize him. Bree answers that a homeland may recognize a traveler by his longing, even when it does not recognize his face. The sentence remains with you as the road rises. You do not yet know whether Narnia will recognize you, or whether you possess any claim upon Archenland. The names Narnia and Archenland return quietly in your thoughts. They are places ahead, but also promises made by people whose lives have become connected with yours. The party crosses a long valley where the ground is covered with pale stones. The valley walls rise on either side, narrowing the sky and making the travelers feel watched. Bree moves carefully, placing each hoof upon stable ground. H-Win follows with equal caution, and Aravis turns repeatedly to examine the high ledges. The silence is broken only by the scrape of gravel and the occasional knock of a loose stone falling from above. You keep the reins short enough to guide Bree, but loose enough to let him choose his footing. Your legs have strengthened through the days of travel, and the movement that once exhausted you now feels almost natural. Bree notices your balance and begins to trust you with greater speed. He teaches you how to descend a slope, cross loose scree, and remain quiet when the trail passes beneath an overhanging rock. His instruction is practical, though his pride gives every lesson the solemnity of a royal command. When the valley opens, a northern wind reaches you. It carries the scent of grass and rock, and the southern dust can no longer follow. Bree raises his head. The wind touches his face, and for a while he says nothing. You can see that the remembered homeland lies somewhere beyond the ridges. Narnia remains unseen, while Archenland waits nearer, its mountains drawing a dark line beneath the sky. The journey has not ended, but the direction has become certain. Bree carries his pride, his fear, and his longing towards the hills. H-Win moves beside him with patient strength, while Aravis rides in silence, no longer entirely alone. You hold the dry leather reins and feel the steady life of the horse beneath the saddle. The hoofbeats pass from sand to stone, from dust to grass, and from the southern world towards Narnia and Archenland. Tashbarn is now a distant memory of bells, market cries, towering walls, dates, dust, and horse sweat. The face of Prince Corin remains behind you, while the road ahead gathers the shape of a new life. No one knows what waits beyond the mountains. The companions travel onward together, carrying their separate histories beneath one dark and peaceful sky. The road north narrows between low ridges of stone, and the travelers move quietly beneath stars that seem colder than those above Tashbarn. You ride beside Aravis, while Bree and H-Win carry the last soft traces of desert dust upon their coats. Ahead, the mountains gather slowly. The land has become empty again, though its emptiness differs from the broad silence of the southern sands. Broken rocks lie scattered across the ground, and the wind slips among them with a dry, whispering sound. Beyond the next rise, the tombs of the ancient kings wait beneath red cliffs and violet distances. Their entrances are dark rectangles in the stone, and no lamps burn within them. You pass between carved walls worn smooth by centuries of wind, feeling the rock's coldness even beneath the afternoon sun. The tombs stand apart from every living road, so the travelers keep their voices low as they cross that eerie place. The desert cools rapidly after sunset, and the stones release the heat gathered throughout the day. Shasta is separated from the others before the night has fully settled. One moment, Bree and H-Win's hoofbeats sound close ahead, with Aravis moving somewhere beyond the broken pillars. The next, darkness folds between the rocks, and every passage seems to lead towards another silent chamber. You are alone among the tombs, standing where sand has gathered in shallow drifts against the ancient walls. A pale moon rises behind the cliffs, turning the desert into a country of silver edges and deep blue hollows. The cold stone beneath you feels harder as the hours pass, while the wind moves through empty chambers like breath through a sleeping house. Loose grains of sand slide along the ground, making faint, dry music that begins and ends without pattern. Somewhere beyond the nearest arch, a small stone falls, and the sound travels farther than it should. The tombs hold the cool scent of dust, old mineral, and darkness untouched by the sun. You draw your cloak close and remain still, listening for returning hoofbeats. Nothing answers from the northern road. The desert night surrounds you without hostility, yet every shadow seems to possess a patient and watchful shape. Then a lion appears. Its presence is first felt in the silence, because the wind has stopped and the sand no longer moves beneath the walls. You hear low breathing beyond the tomb entrance, slow and immense, followed by the soft pressure of paws upon the ground. The lion's eyes catch the moonlight, and fear passes through you with such force that your hands become cold. You cannot see the whole animal clearly, although its outline is large enough to fill the entrance. It does not spring upon you, nor does it growl again. Instead, the lion walks past the opening, leaving a faint stirring of air and the impression that something greater than danger has crossed your path. You remain among the tombs until the first grey light appears above the eastern horizon. During those hours, an unseen voice speaks near you. The voice is gentle, though it carries through the darkness with the certainty of a command. It tells you that the others are in danger, and that the northern road has become a race against an approaching army. You do not see the speaker, nor can you discover where the words have come from. The voice does not explain itself, and the silence after it seems deeper than before. When dawn reaches the tombs, the desert changes color by degrees. Black openings become violet, violet becomes blue, and the cliffs begin to show their red faces beneath the pale morning. A thin line of sunlight touches the highest ridge, while the lower chambers remain filled with cold shadow. The tombs of the ancient kings appear less like houses for the dead than the ruins of a forgotten kingdom. You step from the stone passage into the open air, and the dawn wind moves across your face with a clean, bitter freshness. Far away, hills rise in layers of rose, purple, and copper, each range fading into the next. A lark calls once above the desert, then disappears into the widening sky. The sand has become cool beneath your feet, and the rock retains the night within its cracks. At last, you find the track where the others have traveled, marked by hoofprints and broken stems of dry plants. Bree and Hwyn have gone ahead with Aravis, but the warning has reached them by another path. The travelers understand that their escape from Tashbarn is no longer simply a flight from pursuers. Rabadash, the Calormen prince, has rejected the humiliation of Susan's refusal and begun preparing an attack upon Archenland and Narnia. His pride has changed the direction of many lives. The road north now leads towards war. You ride onward beneath the brightening sky, while the danger behind you gathers speed. The northern route is difficult, climbing through narrow valleys where loose stone shifts beneath the horses' hooves. At one point, the path bends above a ravine, and the sound of falling rock continues below long after the stones have vanished from sight. The travelers cross streams swollen by mountain water, passing through cold channels where the horses' legs tremble beneath the current. Bree keeps his head lowered, choosing each foothold carefully, while Hwyn follows with quiet patience. Aravis rides close enough for you to hear the small creak of her saddle and the measured rhythm of her breathing. The air smells of pine, wet earth, and iron-bearing stone. Above the northern route, clouds gather in torn white masses, and sunlight enters the valleys only in narrow shafts. At evening, the horses' coats steam faintly in the cold, and their harnesses give small metallic sounds whenever they move. You cross the difficult route beneath a sky turning green, gold, and grey. Behind the mountains, the Calormen army advances towards Archenland. Ahead lies the country of King Lune, though no one yet knows that the traveller called Shasta is already part of its royal history. By the time you reach Archenland, the warning has become urgent. Messengers ride along the roads, and watchmen stand upon the hills with horns ready at their lips. The country is green after the desert, with orchards below the slopes and streams shining between fields. Yet the beauty of the land is held beneath the weight of preparation. Men carry bundles of spears through the courtyards, while armorers work beside open doors where sparks fall upon the ground. You hear leather being tightened, buckles fastened, and horses stamping against the stone. The smell of oiled mail, warm leather, horsehair, and wood smoke lies over the royal roads. Before battle, every object seems clearer than usual. A shield rests against a wall, its painted surface scratched by older campaigns. A line of helmets shines beneath the morning light. Saddles hang from beams, and bridles sway whenever wind enters the stable. The horses breathe heavily, their nostrils whitening in the cool air. Edmund and Lucy arrive among the defenders of Archenland, carrying Narnian authority and the memory of many earlier battles. Their presence joins the history of the southern kingdoms to the long history of the Pevensies Golden Age. The attack begins before Rabadash can take the country by surprise. Calormen banners move across the hills, dark against the pale sky. Archenland answers from the valleys, and Narnian strength gathers beside it. You hear horns from one ridge answered by horns from another, until the whole country seems to awaken around the battlefield. Armor presses coldly against shoulders, and reins are damp beneath gloved hands. The grass bends beneath the movement of men and horses. Cloud shadow passes over the slopes, making the lines of soldiers appear and disappear beneath the changing light. Edmund rides into the fighting with the calmness of a king who has already faced darker enemies. Lucy remains among the defenders, carrying courage and healing where the battle has opened its wounds. The struggle continues through the day, but Rabadash's invasion is defeated before he can take Archenland or Narnia. His army breaks against the resistance of the northern kingdoms. The Calormen banners turn away from the walls, and the hills receive the scattered sound of retreating footsteps and loose equipment. At dusk, the battlefield grows quiet. Broken arrows lie among the grass, and abandoned shields gather rain beneath darkening clouds. The smell of trampled earth, sweat, metal, and crushed herbs rises from the ground. Horses stand with lowered heads, their harnesses dulled by dust and the long strain of fighting. Water is carried from the streams, and lamps begin to glow inside the tents. The armor that seemed bright before battle is now scratched and darkened. Leather straps hang loose, while buckles and bits make small sounds as surviving horses are led past. Above the valley, the first stars appear through breaks in the cloud. In the royal camp, Rabadash faces Aslan. The lion's presence is larger than the battlefield, and even the defeated prince cannot command the pride that has brought him there. Rabadash has chosen violence, conquest, and humiliation, believing rank could place him beyond consequence. Aslan transforms him into a donkey, and the punishment follows the shape of his pride. The change is terrible, yet quiet. There is no thunder, and no weapon is raised. The prince who wished to possess kingdoms is left unable to rule even his own appearance. Archenland remains free, and Narnia remains beyond his grasp. King Lune's court receives the travelers after the danger has passed. Within the stone hall, banners hang above polished floors, and firelight turns the carved beams deep amber. You stand near the entrance while servants carry food, water, and warm clothing through the room. The walls hold the coolness of the northern evening, though the hearth sends steady warmth across the floor. Rushes soften the attendants' footsteps, and the scent of bread, cedar smoke, and roasted herbs settles beneath the vaulted ceiling. Through the open doors, you hear horses shifting in the courtyard. Rain taps lightly upon the roof, and drops gather along the edges of the stone steps. King Lune looks upon Shasta for a long time. He does not see the son of Arshish, because Shasta was never truly Arshish's son. He sees the features of a child lost many years before, carried away from Archenland and believed to be dead. The king speaks the name Cair. The name belongs to King Lune's lost elder son. You are Cair, and the knowledge settles over you with the quietness of a door opening into a familiar room. Your life has not been erased. The years beside Arshish, the flight through Tashbaan, the tombs of the ancient kings, and the dangerous northern route remain within you. Yet their meaning changes when the court names you. King Lune recognizes you as his missing son, and the royal household receives you with astonishment, tenderness, and relief. The court learns that Cair's twin brother is Prince Corin, whose life has been shaped by the absence of the elder child. Corin is alive, bold, and accustomed to being the center of stories. When you meet him, the likeness between you is evident, though different roads have altered the two faces. One brother has grown among palaces and tournaments. The other has crossed deserts, tombs, mountains, and the uncertain border between captivity and freedom. The hall becomes quiet as the brothers stand together beneath the banners of Archenland. The fire burns steadily, sending a soft red glow across the stone. Outside, rain moves through the orchard, touching leaves and darkening the earth. The air carries the scent of wet bark and distant pasture. A servant places a woolen cloak around your shoulders, and its texture feels heavy, warm, and unfamiliar. King Loon's voice remains low as he speaks of the years when Cair was missing. The words move through the room like a slow current, bringing sorrow and gladness together. No single moment can return the lost childhood, but the royal family makes a place for you within the years that remain. Cair becomes part of the royal family of Archenland. The name Cair is spoken in the corridors, at breakfast, beside the training yard, and beneath the old trees beyond the castle. In time, Aravis marries Cair. The marriage joins two travelers who have crossed danger without surrendering their judgment or compassion. Their life in Archenland is not free from difficulty, because every kingdom carries old wounds and new duties. Still, the northern country gives them fields, towers, horses, and the patient movement of seasons. Bree and Hwyn remain connected with the northern lands and their talking horse community. They are not absorbed into court life, as though their earlier world had been unimportant. Instead, the friendship between the royal household and the talking horses continues across the borders. Bree returns to the northern country, where horses speak together beneath the open sky. Hwyn keeps the memory of the southern journey, while her quiet dignity becomes part of the stories told beside the Narnian roads. Years pass through Archenland like wind through high grass. The castle stones warm beneath summer sunlight and grow dark beneath winter rain. In spring, water runs swiftly from the hills, carrying pale petals along the streams. During summer, the orchards thicken with fruit, and bees move among the flowering branches. Autumn brings bronze leaves to the valleys and a smoky fragrance from village hearths. Winter lies silver upon the roofs, and horses stand quietly in their stalls while snow gathers along the thresholds. You grow into the life that had been waiting for you. The memory of the tombs remains, though its fear becomes softer with distance. Sometimes, beneath a moonlit sky, the cold stone of the tombs of the ancient kings returns to your thoughts. You remember the lion at the entrance, the unseen voice in the darkness, and the warning that turned a lonely night into the beginning of a kingdom's salvation. Later, that lion's presence becomes connected with Aslan. The knowledge does not make the night less strange. It gives the terror a different depth, because the creature that frightened you had not come to destroy you. Aslan had been near the desert, near the tombs, and near the road by which your life was being carried towards its true name. The kingdom continues through the Golden Age of the Pevensies. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy remain rulers in Narnia, and their reign becomes part of the country's remembered brightness. The four thrones stand together through many seasons. Their decisions shape forests, rivers, mountains, and the roads connecting Narnia with Archenland. Edmund and Lucy are remembered among the defenders of the Northern Kingdom, having helped protect Archenland from Rabadash's attack. Rabadash's defeat becomes an old story, told with less fear as the years pass. His violence and pride remain a warning, while the freedom of Archenland endures. In the western forest, the trees grow tall and close together. Moss covers fallen branches, and the ground remains soft beneath the shadow of the leaves. The wind enters the forest in long, quiet movements, stirring the upper branches before reaching the ferns below. Small birds move through the green darkness, and water can be heard somewhere beyond the trees. Sunlight falls in pale fragments, touching a patch of bark, a stone, or the silver underside of a leaf. The air smells of damp earth, crushed grass, and the clean resin of pine. At the end of their Narnian reign, the four Pevensies ride together through this western forest. They are not searching for battle, treasure, or a kingdom in need of rescue. A white stag has been seen moving between the trees, and the old desire to follow it draws them onward. The stag appears briefly beyond a curtain of leaves. Its coat shines against the deep green undergrowth, and its antlers seem almost weightless among the branches. The riders urge their horses forward. Leaves brush the white stag's path, springing back after its passage. Branches bend beneath the movement of the trees, and the forest floor gives softly beneath the hooves. You pass beneath arches of beech and oak, where the light is cool and green. The stag continues westward, always near enough to be seen and distant enough to remain uncertain. The chase carries the four rulers into a part of Narnia that feels older than their palace and quieter than their roads. Peter rides ahead, while Susan, Edmund, and Lucy follow through the close-growing trees. Their cloaks catch on branches, and the horses breathe deeply as the forest rises around them. The white stag slips between two trunks and vanishes. In its place stands a door. It is an ordinary door in appearance, though it has no house around it. The wood is dark, the hinges are simple, and the handle rests beneath a small patch of sunlight. For a moment, the forest is completely still. No bird calls from the branches. No hoof scrapes against the earth. The leaves remain motionless around the white stag's path. Then the four rulers pass through the door. The country of Narnia falls away, and England receives them again. The wardrobe stands around them, close and dark, smelling faintly of wood, dust, and old fabric. Only moments have passed in England. The children are children again, with their Narnian years hidden inside them like a vast country beneath a familiar coat. Beyond the wardrobe, the house remains quiet. The door back home has opened without noise, and the first reign of the Pevensies has ended. In Narnia, however, years have passed, kingdoms have changed, and the people they knew continue beneath the same deep sky. Archenland remains behind the mountains, with King Loon's house, Cair's restored name, and Aravis beside him. Bree and Hwyn remain connected to the northern lands and the talking horse community whose voices carry through the open country. The roads between Narnia and Archenland keep their familiar dust, stones, grass, and silver streams. The tombs of the ancient kings remain in the desert, empty beneath the moon and dawn. Their chambers hold the wind, the cold stone, and the memory of a lonely traveler who once waited there. Shasta's night among the tombs becomes part of the larger pattern of his life. The lion's frightening shape belongs to the same pattern. The unseen voice belongs to it as well. Through fear, warning, separation, and recognition, the road carried you towards the name Cair. The desert night returns only in fragments now. A dark opening beneath red cliffs, a pale moon above abandoned chambers, the movement of air through empty stone, the quiet certainty that someone unseen was near. When the last light fades over the western forest, Narnia remains beyond the door. Its kingdom lies in the deep country, beneath branches that have closed over the white stag's path. The leaves settle upon the trail, and the hoofprints soften beneath the returning moss. Far away, Archenland's hills darken beneath the evening. Courtyard lamps appear one by one, and horses move quietly under their roofs. The armor from the old battle rests in storerooms, its scratches dim beneath years of dust. Harness hangs from wooden pegs, and the scent of leather remains in the stable air. The river continues through the valley, reflecting the first stars. Nothing in the northern lands has truly ended. Only the doorway has closed between one world and another. The four Pevensies are children again in England, while Narnia keeps the memory of their golden age. Cair remains within Archenland's royal family, and Aravis shares the quiet work of his days. Bree and Hwyn belong to the northern lands, where talking horses still travel through fields and forests beneath the broad sky. The desert keeps its tombs. The tombs keep their silence. And the silence keeps the warning. And beyond the last hills, beneath a darkening sky above Narnia and Archenland, the old kingdoms continue without the sound of departing hooves.